Hello, this is Whispers in the Rain. Welcome to tonight's story time, a collection of real stories pulled straight from the depths of Reddit. Dim the lights. Let the rain drown out the world beyond your walls. And as you listen, remember, these are the stories people swear are true. Comment below where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. You've scrolled far enough. Now close your eyes and let the whispers begin. Story 1. The tape recorder under my bed. U/glass shivers. When I moved into my grandfather's house after he passed, it wasn't grief that haunted me. It was curiosity. He was always a secretive man, kept his bedroom locked, even when no one else was home. I inherited the old Victorian place by default. My parents wanted nothing to do with it. Too many memories, they said. But I wanted to know what he'd been hiding. The house creaked with every step, like it remembered everything that had ever happened inside it. The first night I slept in my old childhood room, I noticed something strange. Beneath the bed, just barely visible in the slats, was a dusty old tape recorder. One of those 90s handheld ones with chunky buttons. It was off, but a tape was loaded inside. A note was taped to it. In shaky, handwritten letters, it read, "Play only when the knocking starts." I laughed nervously, thinking maybe Grandpa had left it as some kind of joke. Still, I slid it into the nightstand drawer, telling myself I'd toss it in the morning. The bed was firmer than I remembered, and the house was unnaturally quiet. No hum of appliances, no distant cars, just silence, deep and oppressive. Sometime around 2 a.m., I woke up to the unmistakable sound of knocking. It wasn't on the front door. It wasn't even from the hallway. It was coming from under my bed. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment I thought I was dreaming. But then it came again, 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the floor beneath me. I sat up, trembling, and remembered the recorder. With shaky hands, I pulled open the drawer and hit play. At first, there was only static. Then I heard a voice, raspy, whispering, and familiar. If you're hearing this, it means the house knows you're alone. I dropped the recorder. The tape kept playing as I backed away. The knocking means it's awake. You need to stay still. Don't talk. Don't scream. There was a long pause. I could hear my grandfather breathing on the tape, shaky and shallow. It can't touch you if you don't acknowledge it. Then the tape clicked off. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just sat there on the floor, watching the space under my bed as the knocking slowly faded into nothing. By morning, I had almost convinced myself it was a dream. Almost. But when I bent down to look under the bed, the carpet where the knocking had come from was worn, rubbed thin in a perfect circle, as if something had been pushing up from underneath for years. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? That day, I searched the basement for answers. The house had an old stone foundation, and the basement was a maze of cobwebs and forgotten boxes. There were no crawl spaces under the floor, nothing that could explain what I'd heard. I even tapped on the beams under my bedroom. Solid. No hollows, no hidden doors. I found more tapes that afternoon. They were hidden behind a loose panel in the back of my grandfather's closet. 10 of them, each labeled in the same handwriting. Week 1, Week 2, and so on. The earliest one was dated 15 years ago. I played the first tape. My grandfather sounded calm at first. He described the knocking, how it began the night after his wife, my grandmother, died. He talked about how it only happened when he was alone. How it never came when the house was full. How it waited. Always waited. Then, his voice dropped lower. It watches through the floorboards. Don't let it learn your name. It listens for it. Remembers it. The tape ended with a long silence. I sat there for a long time, the static whispering into my ears like the house was breathing with me. That night, I invited a friend over. Sarah, someone I trusted. I didn't tell her why. Just asked her to stay for dinner. Maybe crash on the couch. I thought maybe if I wasn't alone, the knocking wouldn't come. It didn't. We talked, watched old horror movies, fell asleep on opposite ends of the living room. I didn't hear a thing. No knocks. No whispering. But Sarah told me something strange the next morning. I had a weird dream, she said, yawning as she rubbed her eyes. I was lying on your bed, and something was underneath it, breathing. It said your name. I didn't respond. I just stared at her. I think your grandpa's house is haunted, she added with a smirk. I didn't tell her she was probably right. Over the next week, I did everything I could to avoid being alone at night. I stayed late at the library. I joined a gym just to linger around people. But life doesn't make room for fear. People get busy. Friends can't sleep over forever. Eventually, it caught up with me. The first night, I was truly alone again. The knocking returned. Not subtle this time, violent, rhythmic, like fists pounding up from the crawl space that didn't exist. I didn't move. I remembered the tape. Don't talk. Don't scream. I sat rigid in bed, eyes locked on the floor as my heart hammered in my chest. Then I heard it. A whisper. Not on the tape. In the room. It said my name. It didn't just whisper it. It drew it out like it was tasting each syllable, savoring the sound. Andrew. I clamped my hands over my ears. The recorder was still in the drawer, untouched. I didn't dare move. Every instinct screamed for me to run, to flip on every light and scream for help, but I couldn't move. The air had weight to it, like I was being pressed into bed by something ancient and unseen. I waited until morning before I finally got up. I played the second tape. Grandpa's voice was different, shaky, a little thinner. He talked about the same whispering, about hearing his name even when he was outside the house. It follows you, he said, but it's tied to the house. It never really leaves. It just waits for you to come back. That explains something I hadn't considered until then. Why he'd never left the house. Not in the last years. Why he'd refused to visit family or travel. He wasn't just grieving, he was afraid. Later that day, I called my mom. I didn't mention the knocking or the tapes, just asked if she ever noticed anything weird growing up. Her voice got quiet. You shouldn't be staying there alone, Andrew. That wasn't an answer. She paused. I don't remember much, but your grandpa used to tell me never to go into the bed at night. Said it was where the mouth lived. I thought it was just a story to keep me in bed, but he used to get anxious, especially after Grandma died. Did you ever hear knocking? More silence. Yes. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom. Instead, I dragged a sleeping bag into the hallway and curled up outside the door with the light on. It was pathetic, but I felt safer knowing I wasn't directly over whatever was beneath that bed. Still, the knocking found me. Not that night, but the one after. It started faint, like someone tapping from far away through layers of walls. But by 3 a.m., it had grown louder, closer. I put my ear to the floor just for a second, and I swear I heard something breathing. Slow. Vet. A sucking inhale followed by a grating exhale, like sandpaper dragged across flesh. I tore myself away and ran to the kitchen. I didn't know what I expected to find there. Maybe a knife, maybe a way out, but all I found was a note on the table in handwriting that wasn't mine. Don't leave. It's learning you. The ink was still wet. I stood frozen for what felt like an hour, then threw the note in the sink and ran water over it until it dissolved. I didn't sleep at all that night. The third tape started with silence. Then Grandpa's voice came through, whispering like he didn't want to be heard. It grows stronger when you listen to it, when you give it your attention. It learns from your fear. He coughed, wet rattling. It told me things I didn't know I'd forgotten. It said my father's name. It said the name of the boy who drowned in the well near the orchard. It whispered them until I thought they were mine. I found myself sitting in the dark by the end of it, holding the recorder in my lap like it was a holy object. I think part of me hoped the tapes were a shield, a ritual, something that worked for Grandpa and might work for me too. But I was beginning to suspect that listening to them only made it worse. That night, I woke to something brushing against my foot. I snapped up, heart in my throat, and stared at the open hallway in front of me. Nothing. But when I looked back at my foot, I saw it a long, gray fingerprint. A single, smudged press against my skin, like someone had touched me from below. The mark faded within seconds, but I didn't move again until sunrise. I couldn't keep pretending I was in control. Whatever was in this house, whatever my grandfather lived with for all those years, it was patient. It was clever. And worst of all, it was getting bolder. That same day, I found a recorder in a different place. I had left it on the kitchen counter the night before. Now it was resting neatly on my pillow. I hadn't slept in that bed in days. The fourth tape began the same way as the others, but there was a tremble in Grandpa's voice now. He sounded tired. I've tried everything. Salt at the door. Prayers. I even tore up the floor and filled it with concrete. It still comes back. I paused the tape and ran upstairs. My heart sank. I hadn't noticed it before, but under the carpet near my bed, the floorboards didn't match the rest of the room. They were newer, smoother, as if someone had tried to seal something away. But the knocking still came. The whispering still found me. When I resumed the tape, Grandpa said something that chilled me. It has a face now. It didn't before. I rewound it. Played again. Same words, same tone. I think it's learning to look like me. I didn't finish the rest of the tape. I couldn't. That night, I dreamt I was back in the hallway, lying in my sleeping bag when I saw myself, another me, crawling out from under the bed. Same clothes, same face, but the eyes were wrong. Too big, too black, smiling like it had just won a game I didn't know I was playing. It didn't say anything. It just stared, inches from my face. When I woke up, the sleeping bag was half unzipped, and I was back inside the bedroom. In the bed I hadn't touched in days. The fifth tape began with Grandpa crying. He was no longer recording instructions, just confessions. "I can't remember which one I am anymore," he said. That single line stuck with me. Was it possible that thing had taken him? That he hadn't died naturally? Was it still pretending to be him? The knocking came again that night. It wasn't from under the bed this time. It was coming from the closet. A slow, polite knock like it was asking to come out. The closet door creaked open on its own. I was frozen on the floor, back against the far wall, flashlight trembling in my hand. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. Something shifted inside the closet. A slow drag, like cloth brushing against wood. Then I saw it. A hand. Thin. Pale. Fingers too long, too many joints. It wrapped around the edge of the door frame, tapping gently, like it was testing the wood. Then another hand joined it. And slowly, impossibly slow, a face leaned out into the hallway light. It was mine, or at least it wore my face. The mouth was too wide. The cheeks hung loose, like the skin didn't quite fit. Its eyes were lidless, two black pits ringed with red, and its head tilted and short, twitching jerks like a curious dog. I dropped the flashlight. Total darkness swallowed the hallway. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark, but the thing never touched me, never crossed the threshold. It just watched. When the sun rose, it was gone. The door was open, but the closet was empty. I left the house for the entire day. Took my car, drove into town, sat at a diner from morning till dusk pretending I had a normal life. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. I brought the remaining tapes into the garage that night, determined to listen to them all to get answers. Tapes 6 through 8 were unintelligible, just static and muffled screams. Tape 9 was blank, but the 10th tape was dated just a few days before Grandpa died. He sounded like he hadn't slept in weeks. His voice was raw. It told me I would be the last, he rasped. But now you're here. I am sorry, Indu. I didn't mean to pass it on. That was all. No explanation. No escape plan. Just guilt. I sat in the garage until the sun came up, thinking about what he said. Passed it on? That meant it wasn't tied to the house. It was tied to me now. When I walked back into the house, every mirror was broken. Not shattered. Cracked, with long, spiraling fractures that split my reflection into 1,000 versions of myself. And in every shard, I wasn't alone. Something stood behind me in each one. I covered the mirrors with sheets, but the reflections stayed with me. Even in polished surfaces, my phone screen, the kitchen faucet, I'd catch glimpses of movement behind me. Just a flicker, a shifting shadow, a grin that faded the moment I turned around. I stopped checking the time. My nights blended into each other like spilled ink. I forgot to eat. I barely slept. When I did, I heard my own voice whispering things I couldn't remember saying. The house changed, too. Doors would be open when I swore I shut them. The air had a dampness to it, like the breath of something massive in the walls. My phone stopped working altogether. Anytime I tried to call someone, it only rang once before cutting to static. I left messages no one returned. Sarah came by once, unannounced. I didn't let her in. Through the peephole, I could see something standing behind her, a tall, thin silhouette with its hands resting gently on her shoulders. She looked empty, not scared, not happy, just blank. She said, "It knows you're trying to leave." then turned around and walked away. I didn't see her again. The final tape wasn't numbered. It was labeled only with one word, mine. Against every instinct, I played it. It wasn't my grandfather's voice anymore. It was mine. Not close to mine, not a good impression. It was exactly my voice, speaking words I'd never said. You can't outrun it. You invited it. You listened. You fed it. I hit stop. I rewound. Same words. I threw the tape recorder into the fireplace and watched it melt. But even then, I swear I could still hear the voice crackling through the flames. That night, I dreamed of the basement. I was walking barefoot through water, and something was humming beneath it, low and melodic. A lullaby in reverse. I felt hands brush my ankles. I woke to wet footprints on the floor, leading from the stairs to my bed. They didn't belong to me. I don't know how this ends. I don't think it does. The knocking has changed now. It's no longer asking for permission. It's announcing its arrival. I'm writing this from the motel down the road. I left the house an hour ago. No box. No shoes. I didn't even lock the door. I just ran. But I know it's not over. In the reflection of the TV screen, I saw something behind me again. Just a flicker of pale skin and two long fingers resting on my shoulder. The knocking followed me here. It's in the walls now, patient and steady. It doesn't need the house anymore. It has me. I don't sleep. I don't dream. I just listen. Sometimes I hear the tape recorder, even though it's gone. My voice playing on loop. You fed it. If you find this post, don't try to help. Don't come looking. Don't speak my name aloud. And whatever you do, don't listen when it knocks. Story 2. The Girl in the Photo Album. Ukosatstitsa maple murmurs. My mother has always kept an old photo album on a coffee table. Worn leather, fraying edges, pages thick and yellow with age. It's filled with images from a life before mine. Weddings, family reunions, school portraits, all black and white or early color. Smiling strangers I never met. I never paid much attention to it growing up. Until last week. I was home visiting for the weekend. My mom had gone to bed early, and I was left alone with my childhood boredom. No good Wi-Fi, no TV in the guest room. I wandered into the living room, flipped through the usual books, then picked up the album. Dust fell off the cover as I opened it. At first, it was the same as always. My grandparents' wedding photo. My mom as a teenager with a truly tragic perm. My uncle, young and smiling, long before his addiction hollowed him out. Then I turned to a page I didn't recognize. There was a picture I swear I'd never seen before. It was a group photo. Outdoors, maybe a picnic, taken from slight distance. There were 9 people in the shot, all facing the camera except one. On the far left, a girl stood just outside the group, half in frame. She wore a pale dress, her hair long and straight, covering most of her face. Her head was tilted, as if caught mid-turn. Something about her posture chilled me. She looked like she didn't belong. I flipped to the next page. Another group photo, this time indoors, maybe a birthday. And again, there she was, in the background this time, peeking from behind a curtain. Same pale dress, same angle of her head. I flipped again. She was there too, on a school field trip shot, standing at the edge of the woods behind the class. Faint, blurry, but unmistakably her. None of the other family members seemed to notice her. I thought maybe it was some cousin I didn't remember, or a friend who'd photobombed a few moments. But it didn't sit right. I took the album to my mom's room and gently woke her. "Hey, who's this girl?" I asked, pointing to the photo. She squinted at the image, then frowned. "There's no one there, honey." "What?" She took the album, stared hard, then laughed nervously. "You must be imagining it. Maybe a shadow. There's no girl. But I could still see her, clear as day." I didn't sleep that night. I left the photo album on the coffee table, but I couldn't stop thinking about the girl. Her stillness. Her placement. She looked out of place, not just because of how she stood, but because her face, what I could see of it, was too pale. Not just skin tone, but texture. Like her skin didn't reflect light the way everyone else's did. In the morning, I asked my mom again, "You really don't see the girl in those pictures?" She gave me a tired look. "Sweetheart, we've had that album since before you were born. No one's ever mentioned a girl. Are you feeling okay?" I let it go. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was seeing patterns where there were none. Until later that evening. My cousin Mark dropped by for dinner. We grew up together. Spent summers pulling pranks and daring each other to sneak into the attic. As we caught up over coffee, I asked him casually, "Do you remember a girl ever being around during family photos? Pale dress, long hair." His expression changed instantly. "You saw her too?" A chill ran down my spine. "I thought I imagined her," he continued. "Years ago, when I stayed here for Christmas, I was flipping through that album, and she was in almost every shot, always in the background, always watching." I swallowed. "Did you ask anyone about it?" "Yeah." Aunt Claire laughed it off, said it was probably a reflection. But when I looked again, she was gone. That night, I sat alone in the living room. I opened the album again, flipping quickly through the pages. She was still there. In some photos, she was clearer now, like she'd moved closer to the camera. In one, she stood right behind my grandfather, though he didn't react at all. And in the very last photo, she was looking directly at me. Her face was still partly obscured, but her eyes were wrong. They weren't just dark, they were empty. Glossy voids that didn't reflect the flash of the camera. I slammed the book shut, and that's when I heard it. A soft rustling behind me, like fabric sliding across leather. I turned around. No one there, but the photo album had fallen off the table. Open again, to the last page, and her hand now rested on the table's edge. I backed away slowly, heart pounding, eyes locked on that pale, narrow hand pressing against the edge of the table. It wasn't just a photograph anymore. It had dimension, texture. I could see the slight yellow of fingernails, the fine line of shadow cast by the overhead light. And then, in a blink, it was gone. The page fluttered as if caught in a breeze, closing gently. The hand disappeared. I stood there in stunned silence for a long time, waiting for something else to happen. But the house was quiet again. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed up researching. I tried to find old family photos online, weddings, parties, anything that might have a digital copy. A few were scanned into social media accounts, older posts from cousins or aunts. I checked each one carefully. She was in all of them, blurry, grainy, barely noticeable at first. In one, she was standing just behind a group of kids. In another, crouched in the far corner of a garden, always just at the edge of the frame, always still, watching. I even found one photo of me as a toddler, my 3rd birthday party. I was wearing a paper crown, grinning at a cake. And there she was, reflected in the mirror behind me. Only this time, she wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at me. The realization struck me like a cold slap. She's not in the photos because of the camera. She's in them because of us. The next morning, I told my mom I had to go back to the city early. I lied and said there was a work emergency. She didn't press me, but just before I left, she stopped me at the door. "Hey, you look pale. You okay?" "I just didn't sleep well." She hesitated. "I had a strange dream last night, about a girl in the hallway. She was looking for you." My blood froze. "What did she look like?" "I couldn't see her face," she said. Her hair was covering it. I nodded slowly and left without another word. But as I walked to my car, I felt someone watching from the upstairs window. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see her there. Back in my apartment, I tried to forget. I buried myself in work, kept the lights on at all hours, and avoided mirrors more than I'd like to admit. But fear has a way of following you, especially when you bring part of it home. 3 days after I left my mom's house, the photo album arrived at my doorstep. No note, no box, just the album sitting neatly on my welcome mat. I didn't bring it inside. Instead, I stared at it through the peephole for an hour, as if it might move. When I finally opened the door, it was gone. I told myself someone was playing a trick, that I had imagined it. That night, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to the sound of pages turning. Slow, deliberate, one after another. The album was sitting on my kitchen table. I live alone. I approached it cautiously, my skin crawling. It was open to a photo I didn't recognize, an image of my current apartment, taken from outside the living room window. A silhouette stood in the glass, just behind the curtain. Long hair, pale dress, face hidden. I flipped the page. Another photo, me asleep in bed, mouth slightly open, taken from above, like someone had stood over me. The next page was blank, and the next, and the next. The rest of the album had been emptied. Nothing but white photo paper waiting. I shut the album and locked it in the hallway closet, stacking books and chairs in front of the door. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't sleep. I watched the closet all night. The next day, I texted Mark. He didn't respond. I called him straight to voicemail. Later that evening, I got a photo message from an unknown number. No text, just the image. It was a picture of Mark standing in front of his bathroom mirror, and in the reflection behind him stood the girl. Face still hidden, but one hand raised to touch the glass. I haven't heard from him since. I finally tried burning the album. I took it to an empty field just outside town, soaked it in lighter fluid, and dropped a match. The fire caught fast, pages curling, photos blistering. Smoke curled up thick and oily. It should have been satisfying. But then I saw her, across the field, maybe 20 yards away, standing at the tree line. The girl. The pale dress fluttered in the breeze, and her hair swayed gently, like it was underwater. She didn't move, just stood there, watching as her image turned to ash. And then she started walking toward me. I ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop until I slammed my apartment door shut behind me. That night, my phone camera turned on by itself. I watched in horror as it switched to the front-facing lens and took a photo. Then another, and another. When I checked the gallery, each photo showed me looking terrified, but over my shoulder, in each shot, her shape was getting clearer. Closer. She wasn't standing anymore. She was crouching, like an animal preparing to pounce. I deleted them all, threw my phone in the sink, and left it there. I started checking the locks. Every few minutes. Every hour. Obsessively. I pushed furniture against windows. Covered every reflective surface. But deep down, I knew none of it mattered, because she was already inside. I heard her in the walls. Soft scraping, like nails brushing against plaster. Whispers too low to understand. A lullaby in a language I didn't know. And then, one night, I woke to find the album back on the table. Pristine, untouched, as if it had never burned at all. I opened it. There were no family photos. Only me. Page after page. Photos of me sleeping, walking, showering, brushing my teeth. From impossible angles. From inside the mirror. From under the bed. And in every one, she was just a little closer. In the last photo, she was standing at the foot of my bed, smiling. The smile was the worst part. It didn't belong on her face. Too wide, too toothy. The corners of her mouth stretched almost to her ears, like a mask pulled too tight. Her lips were cracked, her teeth small and gray like old milk. She wasn't just posing anymore. She was enjoying it, reveling in being seen. I tore the photo out of the album, but underneath it was another copy. Same image, same smile. I ripped that out too, only to find a third beneath it. Endless duplicates, printed perfectly, pressed into the paper like they'd always been there. That night, I set up a camera in my bedroom. Not for evidence, for answers. I needed to know if I was losing my mind, or if she was real. I let it record while I pretended to sleep, clutching a flashlight under the blanket like a child hiding from monsters. At 2:41 a.m., the light in the hallway flickered. At 2:42, the door creaked open. I didn't hear it in real time, but when I watched the footage the next morning, the door moved slowly, as if nudged by wind. A figure stood there for several minutes. The girl. She didn't walk in. She just stood at the threshold, watching me. Not blinking, not breathing. Her head cocked to one side. Then, frame by frame, she smiled again. And vanished. Not walked out. Vanished. I shut the laptop and threw it across the room. The screen cracked. I didn't care. It confirmed what I already knew. She was no longer tethered to photographs. She was watching now. Constantly. The whispers started soon after. I heard them while brushing my teeth. In the shower. In the hum of the fridge. A faint voice that said my name in soft, broken syllables. One night, I sat perfectly still and whispered back, "What do you want?" There was silence. Then, behind me, from directly under the bed, "Say cheese." I moved out 2 days later. Left everything behind. Furniture, clothes, even my phone. I didn't want anything she might have touched. I rented a motel room on the edge of nowhere and paid in cash. No forwarding address. No electronics. Just me in a suitcase full of silence. For a while, I thought it worked. There were no photos. No whispers. No flickering lights. The quiet was a relief, even if it was heavy. I told myself I was free. Until last night. I checked into a new room. Nothing special, just a bed, a mirror above the sink, and a dusty nightstand. I didn't think much of it until I opened the drawer and found a small stack of Polaroids. The first photo was of the motel hallway. The second was of the room door. The third was of me, sitting on the edge of the bed, holding the Polaroids. I dropped them instantly, heart stuttering in my chest. They slipped across the floor like fallen leaves. I backed into the corner, eyes darting around the room. Then I saw the album. It sat neatly on the dresser. I hadn't brought it. The cover was darker now, leather cracked and wrinkled like skin. I don't remember walking to it, but suddenly my hands were on the pages, turning with a mind of their own. The new photos were different. Each one was closer, more intimate. A hand reaching around a doorframe. Hair brushing the edge of a pillow. A reflection behind me I hadn't noticed. In the final picture, she was in bed beside me. Eyes open, mouth slightly parted, her hand on my chest. And I swear, though I can't prove it, that I felt the weight of that hand. I slammed the album shut and threw it against the wall. The lamp shattered. I didn't care. I crawled into the bathroom, locked the door, and waited for sunrise, whispering to myself that I was still real, that I still existed, that I was still alone. But when I looked in the mirror, there were two shadows behind me. I smashed the mirror, packed what little I had, and ran again. I've been moving from motel to motel, never staying more than a night. But no matter where I go, the album finds me. Sometimes it's on a nightstand, sometimes beneath my pillow, always open to a new photo I never remember being taken. Last night's was the worst yet. It showed me asleep, mouth slightly open, face pale, and her kneeling on my chest, smiling, inches from my face. I don't know what she wants, only that she's closer now. In every photo, in every reflection. If you find an old album in your home, don't open it. Don't flip through it. Don't look at her. She only appears to those who see her. And once she smiles at you, she never leaves. Story 3. The Man Who Lives in the Walls. U/third knob left. I always thought the weird noises in my apartment were just thin walls and bad insulation. The place was cheap. After all, a narrow one-bedroom on the third floor of an aging building downtown. I moved in 6 months ago. My lease said recent renovations, but that was a lie. The floorboards creaked even when I wasn't walking. The water hissed when it shouldn't. And at night, the walls made strange, wet clicking sounds. It was annoying, sure, but I was broke. I figured I could live with it, until I started hearing breathing. It didn't happen every night. Just sometimes, right before sleep, when the lights were off and my head hit the pillow, I'd hear it. A slow, rhythmic inhale and exhale, faint but unmistakable. It always came from the same spot, the wall behind my bed. I tried explaining it away. Maybe the neighbors? Maybe the pipes? But something about the sound felt too close. Too human. Then one night it stopped. No breathing. No clicks. Just silence. And in that silence, I heard something else. 3 knocks. Knock. 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 From inside the wall. I jumped up, heart pounding. The wall behind my bed was plain drywall, painted beige like the rest of the place. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Eventually, I laughed it off. Old building, I muttered. The next morning, I found something strange in the kitchen. One of the cabinet doors was open. Not just cracked, wide open. I know I hadn't used it. I live alone. I closed it, assuming it didn't latch properly. That day, I moved the bed away from the wall. Just a foot or two for peace of mind. That night, the breathing returned. Louder this time. Almost raspy. Labored. It didn't fade when I turned the lights on. It kept going, steady and slow, like someone had just fallen asleep inside the drywall. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, there were scratches on the inside of the cabinet door. The scratches weren't random. They were deliberate. 4 thin gouges, evenly spaced, dragging downward like fingers. I ran my hand across them, fresh. The wood beneath was pale where the varnish had been scraped away. I didn't own any pets. I didn't have a roommate. There was no reason for them to be there. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe I'd done it moving things around and hadn't noticed. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. That night, I didn't sleep in my bedroom. I set up a blanket on the couch and left the TV on for background noise. I needed to trick my brain into feeling safe. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. This time, it came from the wall beside the TV. I muted the screen and waited. The knocks didn't repeat, but the air in the room shifted, like it grew heavier, warmer. I could feel something watching me, even though nothing moved. The next morning, I noticed something else. The framed photo on my bookshelf had been turned around. It was a picture of me and my brother, taken a few years ago. We were standing in front of a cabin, arms around each other, smiling like idiots. Now the frame faced the wall, and behind it, written in small, cramped letters on the back of the photo, was a message. Don't move the bed again. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know what scared me more, that someone had written it, or that they knew I'd move the bed. I started looking around the apartment, tapping on walls, checking for crawl spaces or loose panels. In the hallway closet, I found a small door I hadn't noticed before, tucked behind some paint cans. It was maybe 2 feet high, too small for anyone to crawl through, but it was padlocked shut. The lock was old, rusted, and thick with dust. I didn't open it. Not yet. That night, I turned the camera on my phone and pointed it toward the wall behind the TV. I hit record, set it down, and tried to sleep. When I checked the footage in the morning, it was mostly nothing. Just the static hush of a quiet room. But at 3:12 a.m., the video warped. Just for a second. And in that second, I saw and I blinked through the wall. I froze the footage frame by frame. The distortion lasted exactly 1 second. Maybe 24 frames total. But in 3 of them, you could clearly see it. An eye, wide and gray, staring through the drywall like the surface wasn't even there. It blinked once, then vanished. I sat there for a long time, phone in hand, trying to rationalize it. Could it be a glitch? A trick of the light? But no trick of the light could create that. The iris was too detailed. The scara had tiny red veins. There was movement awareness. It was real, and it had looked at me. I left for the day, went to the library, then wandered the city for hours. I didn't want to be near that apartment. But where else could I go? My lease wasn't up for another 6 months. My savings were shot. I went back only when the sky had turned dark. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, except the hallway closet door was open. The one with the tiny padlock door behind the paint cans. The lock was still there, dangling from the latch, but the door was open wide. Inside was a short, narrow tunnel. My breath caught. It was barely tall enough to crawl through, dusty and lined with cracked wooden beams. A single rusted nail protruded from the frame, smeared with what I can only describe as something dark. I didn't touch it. Instead, I closed the closet door and pushed a bookshelf in front of it. Around midnight, I heard the wall behind the bed groan. Not creak, groan like something shifting inside it. Then the breathing returned, louder than before. Closer, and I realized something that made my blood run cold. It was no longer coming from inside the wall. It was coming from between the wall and the bookshelf, like something had crawled out of the tunnel and was standing on the other side. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. But the breathing paused as if it heard my thoughts. Then 3 slow knocks. Knock, 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 and a voice, low and rasping, just inches from my ear. I said, "Don't move the bed." I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just sat there, locked in place, my breath shallow and ears ringing. The voice hadn't come from the other side of the room or even through the wall. It had been right beside me, as if it leaned in close, lips nearly touching skin. But when I finally turned my head, there was no one there. The breathing was gone. The room was cold and empty again. But I didn't sleep. Not that night. Not after hearing him. I stayed up until sunrise, every light on, knife clutched in my hand like a child afraid of the dark. My eyes never left that wall. Not once. The next morning, I did the only thing I could think of. I called the landlord. He didn't answer, so I left a message. "Hey, it's apartment 3C. There's something wrong. Something in the walls. I need someone to come look at this place. It's not safe." I didn't mention the voice, or the eye, or the tunnel. I just hoped someone would call me back. An hour later, there was a knock on my door. 3 knocks. I froze. Then it came again, faster this time. Knock, 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 knock. I crept toward the door and looked through the peephole. but there was no one there. Not a single soul in the hallway. Then I saw the note. It had been slid under the door, typed on yellowing paper in a font that looked like it came from an ancient typewriter. Do not call them. He doesn't like being noticed. No signature. No return address. I opened the door and checked the hallway again. Empty. But down at the far end, near the stairwell, I noticed something on the wall. Small. Circular. A hole. No larger than a quarter. Perfectly round. About eye level. It hadn't been there before. I stepped closer and peered inside. It was pitch black. And then something blinked. I stumbled backward so fast I fell. My head hit the floor, and for a few seconds I couldn't see, couldn't breathe, just static buzzing through my brain. When I finally managed to sit up, the hole was still there. Still dark. But whatever was behind it wasn't blinking anymore. It was waiting. I packed a bag and left. Didn't lock the door. Didn't turn off the lights. I just ran. I stayed at a friend's place that night. Caleb, someone I barely talked to since college, but he owed me a favor. I didn't tell him everything. Just said there was someone stalking me, maybe breaking into my place. He offered his couch. I didn't argue. That night, I tried to sleep. But sometime around 3 a.m., I felt that familiar shift in the air the one-eyed felt in my apartment. The weight. The stillness. I opened my eyes. There across the room, just barely visible in the glow of the streetlight through the blinds, was a figure crouched in the corner. Not standing. Crouched. Long limbs folded tightly, chin resting on its knees. Watching me. Its face was in shadow, but I knew. I knew it was him. I didn't blink. I didn't move. And after what felt like hours, he slowly backed into the wall behind him. Without standing, without turning, just sank into it like smoke disappearing through a crack. I moved again. Motels. Couch surfing. Never sleeping more than a few hours. Always checking the walls. I left everything behind. But I couldn't shake the feeling he was still following. Still inside the walls somehow. Not just of my apartment, but of anywhere I went. A few days ago, I noticed a new crack forming in the ceiling of my hotel room. Fine at first. Just cosmetic. Then, this morning it was larger. A long, jagged line running from one corner to the other. And next to it, 3 faint indentations. Knock, knock, knock. I stood on the bed and pressed my hand to the ceiling. The indentations weren't random. They were knuckle-sized, small but deliberate. I knocked back just once, and something knocked in return. I left the hotel that afternoon. Took a bus to another city, 6 hours away. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. Changed my name on all my accounts. Started using cash. I found a basement room in a rundown boarding house. No shared walls. No neighbors above or below. Just cinder block and silence. For 3 nights, there were no noises. No breathing. I thought maybe, just maybe I'd lost him. But on the 4th night, I found something under my bed. A single piece of paper, folded neatly. Typed again. No signature. Stop running. He lives in the walls of you now. I don't remember screaming, but I must have. I woke the landlord. He threatened to kick me out if I made noise again. Said the other tenants were complaining. That I was keeping him up. I hadn't spoken a word all week. That's when I realized the truth. He doesn't just follow me. He becomes part of wherever I go. He spreads like mold. Like rot. Wherever I sleep, he waits. In the cracks. In the pipes. In the empty spaces behind outlets and vents. And he listens. He learns. Now, when I speak, sometimes I hear him repeat my words, just a second too late. A soft echo in the wall. It's not mocking. It's practicing. Learning how to be me. Last night, I looked in the bathroom mirror and saw my reflection blink before I did. I punched the glass until it shattered. I don't use mirrors anymore. I sleep with my back to the wall now. Not because it's safer, but because I'm afraid that one night I'll wake up and I'll be inside the wall looking out. I'm losing time now. Sometimes I'll find myself standing in a room I don't remember entering, lights off, staring at a blank wall. Sometimes I wake up facing a corner, fingernails cracked and bloody, drywall, dust in my mouth. My voice sounds different, hollow, like it's coming from somewhere else. I've stopped trusting my own reflection. When I catch it, it's always just slightly wrong. A lag in the blink, a twitch in the corner of the mouth. He's not just watching anymore. He's becoming. Last night, I heard my own voice humming through the air vent. A tune I didn't know. Soft, childlike, over and over, as if trying to remember how it goes. I don't hum. I took a hammer to every wall. I ripped out chunks of plaster, found nothing but wires and dust. But I felt him watching, smiling, like a mouse watching a cat panic. And then today, I found the third door. It wasn't there before. Between the closet and the bathroom. Plain white. No handle, but slightly ajar. A draft came through it. Cold. Rotten. I pushed it open. Behind it was a narrow corridor, no more than 3 feet wide. The walls were made of unpainted wood and crawling with mildew. I followed it, ducking low, heart thudding. It led behind the walls of my room. And then, I saw it. A small space. Nest-like. Blankets. A cracked mirror. And photos. Hundreds of them. Of me. Sleeping. Eating. Crying. Dozens from places I didn't even recognize. Every wall plastered with them. And in the center, a man. Thin. Hairless. Gray skin stretched tight over his skull. He crouched there, grinning, wearing my hoodie. My shoes. My face. He looked up and said in my exact voice, "Finally, room for two." I don't know how I got out. I just remember running. Through the narrow hallway, into the street, barefoot and screaming. No one helped. No one looked. It's like they couldn't see me anymore. Now I stay in cheap motels, always ground floor, never near corners. But the walls still click. I still hear breathing behind the vents. And when I speak, sometimes I hear him answer in my voice. If you hear knocking from inside your walls, don't ignore it. Don't answer. Don't move the bed. He only needs space. Once he finds it, he'll wear your skin like it was always his. And when he smiles in your mirror, you'll realize the truth too late. That you're the one behind the wall now. Watching. Waiting. For someone new to knock. Story 4. The bus that wasn't on the schedule. U/sleep through screams. I take the same route to work every morning, bus 17B. It stops a block from my apartment and drops me 3 blocks from my office. I've taken it for years. The same driver, the same regulars, the same boring routine. But last Monday, bus 17B never showed up. I waited in the drizzle for nearly 40 minutes, checking the schedule on my phone, refreshing the transit app again and again. It showed the bus had already passed. But I've been there the whole time, watching the road. Nothing. Just when I gave up and started walking home to call an Uber, a different bus pulled up. Older. Faded blue paint. No route number. Just a small hand-painted sign in the window that read, Downtown Express. I hesitated. The driver leaned toward the door, opening it with a loud hiss. He wore a cap pulled low and a large pair of sunglasses. I couldn't see much of his face, but he gave me a short nod. "Going downtown?" he asked. His voice was hoarse, almost like a whisper wrapped in static. I glanced inside. Empty. No passengers. I was running late. Vet. Frustrated. And something about the warm yellow light inside made it feel safe. Familiar. "Yeah," I said. "Thanks." I stepped in. The doors groaned shut behind me. The seats were old-fashioned, with faded green cushions and metal handrails that had lost their shine. There was a strange smell, not foul but preserved, like walking into an attic that hadn't been opened in years. I sat down near the middle. The driver didn't say another word. The engine revved softly, and we pulled away from the curb. I looked out the window, expecting to see familiar streets blur by. Instead, the city seemed to stretch. Buildings taller, shadows longer. The road ahead, narrower than I remembered. I checked my phone. No signal. No time. Just a black screen. That's when I realized something was wrong. The bus wasn't stopping. It was just driving, and I was the only one on it. I stood up, gripping the cold rail as I moved toward the front. "Excuse me," I called out. "I think I missed my stop." The driver didn't answer. He didn't even move. His hands were tight on the wheel, knuckles pale. I stepped closer. "Hey, hello." Still nothing. I reached out, slowly, about to tap his shoulder, when he suddenly turned his head just enough to speak. "You sit back down now," he rasped. "Not safe up here." His voice, it didn't come from his mouth. Not really. It echoed around the bus like it came from the speakers or the floor itself. I felt it in my ribs. I backed away and returned to my seat, heart hammering. I didn't want to ride anymore. I didn't want to be on that bus. I tried to open the emergency exit, but the lever was rusted into place, unmoving. I pounded on the window, but no one was outside. Just an endless stretch of dark road and distorted buildings passing like shadows. No street signs, no stoplights, no people. I tried my phone again, still dead. That's when I noticed the windows had changed. They weren't showing the city anymore, not even warped versions of it. Now, they showed something else entirely. Endless rows of leafless trees, bent black, reaching toward the bus like fingers. We weren't downtown. We weren't even anywhere close. And then I saw movement. In a window to my left, something ran alongside the bus. Fast, pale limbs flashing between trees. I leaned closer and saw it. A person, or at least something shaped like one. It ran on all fours impossibly fast, its face turned toward me, but smeared like its features had been erased. No eyes, no mouth, just skin stretched across bone. Then another one appeared behind it. Then 3 more. They were following the bus, keeping pace. I stumbled back into my seat and looked around. Still empty. Except it wasn't. 2 rows behind me, a woman was suddenly sitting. Long black dress, hands folded in her lap, and no face at all. Creams. She hadn't been there a second ago. I was sure of it. The woman sat perfectly still. Her skin was pale, almost translucent under the humming yellow lights. Her head tilted slightly toward me, as if she knew I was watching, despite the absence of eyes, nose, or mouth. I blinked, and she was closer, 1 row closer. I gasped and stood up, heart pounding. "Hey," I called to the driver. "There's someone back here. I don't know what's happening." He didn't respond. His head remained locked forward, hands tight on the wheel, driving through a road that no longer resembled anything from my world. I turned back. She was now in the seat across the aisle from me, still facing forward, still motionless. But her hands were no longer folded. They were gripping the seat in front of her, fingers curled so tightly the skin was stretched white across her knuckles. I backed toward the rear of the bus. My breath fogged the glass behind me, cold air now leaking in from somewhere. The lights flickered, and I swear I saw more figures outside the windows, standing among the trees, watching, all faceless, all perfectly still. The woman beside me rose from her seat with a slow, shuddering motion. She turned toward me, head rotating too far, bones cracking beneath unseen muscles. And then she opened her mouth, or maybe not a mouth, more like a gap, a rip, a vertical tear splitting the center of her face from forehead to chin. A deep black void stretched behind it, filled with a whispering sound like wind in a grave. She stepped forward. I scrambled for the rear exit. It didn't open. The emergency hatch above was sealed tight. The bus shook now, not from bumps in the road, but from the sound. The hum. The whispering from her face grew louder, sharper, like countless voices speaking at once from a throat that didn't exist. And behind her, 3 more passengers had appeared, each one identical, each one faceless, each one standing and advancing. I shoved myself between the back seats, arms scraping against the window as I searched for anything to break the glass. My elbow struck the corner hard. Pain shot through me, but the glass didn't crack. The bus just kept moving, smooth and endless, like we weren't even touching a real road anymore. The faceless figures crept closer, their movements jerky and unnatural, like marionettes pulled by invisible strings. The first woman reached the back row, her black void of a mouth still whispering that horrible wind speech. I couldn't take it anymore. I screamed, "Let me OFF." For the first time, the bus responded. With a sudden screech, it stopped. The lights flickered, and the aisle went dark. When they came back on, the figures were gone. The seats were empty again, even the driver. I stood there, frozen, listening to the unnatural silence. No engine, no whispers, just the ticking of the overhead lights and the sound of my own panicked breath. I crept to the front, stepping carefully over the center aisle. The driver's seat sat empty. The wheel turned gently, though the bus had clearly stopped. And outside the windshield was nothing. Not a street, not a field, not even a tree. Just a vast, pale expanse stretching forever in all directions. like fog, but heavier, denser, almost like skin. And standing there in front of the bus was a single figure, smaller than the others, human-shaped. It didn't move. It didn't need to, because I recognized the clothes. It was wearing my jacket, my jeans, my shoes, even a rip in the left sleeve from when I caught it on my mailbox last week. I stared at it, heart thudding, and then slowly it raised one hand and waved. I stepped back from the windshield, breath caught in my throat. That thing, it wasn't just dressed like me. It stood like me. Same posture, same nervous twitch in the left shoulder. It knew how I moved, how I stood, how I was. It dropped its hand, tilted its head, and started walking toward the bus. I spun around, desperate to find a way out. Every door was sealed shut, the windows like solid stone. My fists bruised from pounding on them. The emergency exit was gone, replaced by smooth, seamless wall. The aisle behind me groaned. I turned slowly. The seats were filling again. The faceless passengers, 7 of them now, sat scattered across the bus, all wearing different clothes, all staring straight ahead, hands folded, and each one was dressed like someone I knew. My high school science teacher, the barista from my usual coffee shop, my old roommate from college. I hadn't seen them in years, but I remembered their clothes, their posture, their energy. And now here they were, silent, faceless, waiting. The door creaked. That version of me, the thing outside, was standing at the front of the bus now, just on the other side of the glass. Closer, so close I could see tiny details. The fraying threads on my jeans, the coffee stain on my hoodie from this morning, even a small scar under my right eye. It was perfect, too perfect. It reached one hand up and tapped the glass once. Talp! The sound echoed through the bus like a drum in a cathedral. The lights flickered again. The seats trembled. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun, no one. But a whisper filled the air, not from any mouth, but from inside the bus itself. From the walls. From the seat cushions. He's almost done with you. The glass at the front door shattered inward, and my double stepped inside. He climbed the steps slowly, deliberately, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Like I had. Every movement he made was familiar. My gait, my shoulders, even the way I touched the rail. It was like watching a reflection step out of a mirror that no longer needed glass. His face wasn't blank like the others. It was mine. Exactly mine. But not quite. His smile was too still. Too symmetrical. And his eyes. Mine are greenish hazel. His were black. Not the absence of light, but full. Like what obsidian? Endless. He looked around at the faceless passengers, nodded once, and turned to me. "You're in my seat," he said. The voice was mine, but hollow, like it had passed through 100 mouths before reaching me. I backed down the aisle, stumbling. He followed, not rushing. Confident. Certain. "This isn't real," I whispered. "It's a dream. A hallucination." He laughed. A dry, rasping sound that made the windows tremble. "You got on," he said. "That's what matters. You stepped into our world." He gestured to the passengers. They did too. I turned to run, but the bus shifted beneath me. The aisle stretched longer. The rows multiplied. The exit disappeared again. "Where are we?" I shouted. "This is the route for the left behind," he said. "For the forgotten. You didn't belong out there anymore. You were already fading. We just gave you a place." He stepped closer. A body. The passengers stood, one by one, and began walking toward me in perfect silence. Their faces started to form. My parents. My co-workers. My friends. All with empty smiles and dead eyes. I screamed. The double raised a hand, and they stopped. "Last stop," he said. "Time to switch." He reached out, and I realized I couldn't remember my own birthday, or my address, or the name of the street I lived on. My hands began to vanish. I stared at my hands, fading, flickering like static. First the fingers, then the palms, vanishing inch by inch like I was being erased from the inside out. The double stepped forward, arms wide, as if welcoming me to some terrible family reunion. "No one remembers the almost people," he said. "That's how we get in." I tried to run, but my legs felt heavy, distant, like they weren't mine anymore. The passengers surrounded me, not attacking, watching. as if they'd all done this before. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. The double moved closer, now just a breath away. I could see every pore on his face, my face, but it looked wrong, stretched over something thinner, something taller. He reached out and pressed a single finger to my forehead. The world bent sideways. I was back in my apartment, in bed. Morning light spilled through the blinds. I gasped and sat up, drenched in sweat. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, alive again. I checked the time. 6:47 morgens. Had it all been a dream? I stumbled to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. Everything looked normal, but my eyes, greenish hazel, caught something strange. A flicker, just for a second. Black. I blinked, leaned closer. It was gone. I tried to laugh it off, but something inside me was trembling, shaking in a way I couldn't reach. I went to work. Took 17B, the real one. The driver nodded like always. No one looked at me twice. But when I got home that evening, I found something in the mailbox. An envelope. No name. No address. Inside was a bus ticket. A faded blue one. No route number. Just one word typed neatly in the center. Return. And underneath, written in my own handwriting, your seat is waiting. I burned the ticket. But the next morning, there was another, folded beneath my pillow. I hadn't left it there. I hadn't even gone near the bed since I came home. Every night now, I hear a low hum outside, an engine idling just beyond the window. When I look, there's nothing there, just fog rolling over the street. But I can feel the bus waiting. Sometimes, when I pass mirrors, I catch myself smiling, even when I'm not. And today, I forgot my sister's name. I don't even have a sister. I don't know how long I have. If you see a faded blue bus with no number, don't get on. No matter how late you are, no matter how tired you feel. Because once you take a seat, someone else gets up, and they're wearing your face. Story 5. There's a door in my floorboards. I didn't know the door was there until I spilled my coffee. I was trying to carry too many things at once, mug, laptop, headphones, and I caught the edge of the coffee table. The cup flipped, splashed across the floor, and rolled under the worn area rug in the living room. As I pulled the rug back to clean, something caught my eye, something metal glinting beneath the stained wood. A hinge, 2 of them, barely visible, flush with the floorboards. I stared at them, puzzled. I'd lived in this house for 4 years. It was an old place, mid-century with creaky stairs and drafty windows. I thought I knew every inch, but I'd never seen a door under the rug. My heart kicked up just a bit. Maybe it was a crawl space? A trapdoor to an old root cellar? Still, it was strange. There was no handle, no latch, just a thin seam and those rusted hinges barely visible beneath the dull wood grain. I ran my fingers along the edge. It was tight, sealed perfectly against the boards. But I could feel air. Cold, dry air rising from the gap. I fetched a flathead screwdriver from the kitchen drawer and wedged it under the seam. With a few grunts, I pried it loose. The door lifted. Beneath, it was a narrow hole, maybe 3 feet wide, and descending into complete darkness. It didn't smell like a cellar. It smelled like dust, ancient dust, dry and sour, like something long forgotten. I grabbed a flashlight from under the sink and shone it down. Stairs, narrow wooden ones, descending at a sharp angle into the void. Cobwebs stretched between the steps like delicate curtains. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air. Something about the way the light vanished halfway down was wrong. I should have closed it, nailed it shut, and forgotten. But curiosity clawed at me. I went to my room, changed into jeans and boots, grabbed a hoodie and gloves. I texted my sister, going to investigate weird hatch in the floor. If I don't text back in an hour, send someone. She replied with a laughing emoji and a be safe. I almost didn't go down. But something pulled at me. Not fear, something stranger. Like I was supposed to. Like I've been waiting to find this for years without knowing it. I lower myself through the hatch, boots finding the first stair. The wood groaned beneath me. Then again on the next step. It was dark. So dark the flashlight beam looked like it was swallowed by velvet. No sound except my breath. No sense of walls. I kept going, step by step, until the hatch above was just a faint outline. And then I heard it. A sound below me. Not a creak. Not an animal, but a whisper. A single word, rasped up from below. Finally, I froze, one foot on the stair, the other midair. My flashlight trembled in my grip, casting shaky shadows against the descending tunnel. I waited, breath held so long it burned in my chest. Nothing followed, just that one word. Finally, I turned the flashlight downward again. The beam barely reached, as if the darkness below was denser than normal air. But I saw movement, not sudden, not lunging, just slow, shifting. I kept going. Each step moaned louder than the last. The further I descended, the colder it got. Not icy, but empty cold, like a place that had never known warmth. At the bottom, I found a corridor. The walls were wooden, rough, and damp, as if they'd been buried under earth for 100 years. The passage stretched in both directions. One side disappeared into black, the other ended in a wooden door. The same kind of wood as the hatch above. No handed, only a peephole. I don't know what compelled me, but I walked to it and looked through. Nothing. Just a room bathed in pale light. I couldn't see much, just the edges of what looked like furniture. A table, maybe a chair, and then something moved past the hole. Too close to see clearly, but slow. Tall. I knocked. I don't know why. 3 soft taps. I regretted it instantly, because from the other side, something knocked back. 1 tap, then a pause. 2 more, like it was thinking. I stepped away, turned, started back toward the stairs. I hadn't taken 3 steps when I heard the creak of hinges behind me. I turned back. The door was now open. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a lantern hanging from the ceiling. It flickered slightly. The walls were lined with shelves, each one full of old items. Trinkets, bits of cloth, yellowed teeth, a broken music box, things that fell out of place, but personal. In the center of the room stood a chair. Facing away, someone sat in it. They didn't move. I couldn't see their face. The urge to run overwhelmed me, but my legs wouldn't listen. I stepped inside the room. The second I crossed the threshold, the door behind me slammed shut. The lantern dimmed, and the person in the chair whispered, "Do you remember now?" I didn't answer, because I felt it then. The floor wasn't made of wood anymore. It was soft, breathing. The floor beneath me pulsed, just once. A slow, rising swell like the chest of a sleeping animal. It startled me into a step back, and the boards beneath my boots gave slightly, like stepping on overripe fruit. My flashlight flickered. The person in the chair remained still, back facing me. I wanted to speak, ask who they were, what this place was, but something told me not to. Like sound would give them permission for something I didn't want. Instead, I turned slowly, reaching for the door. There was no handle, no siam, no sign it had ever opened. Just a smooth, pulsing wall that now resembled skin more than wood. The room had changed while I wasn't looking. The shelves were still there, but the objects were different now. More recent. A broken iPhone, a baby's sock, a cracked glasses lens. Things that didn't look old, they looked used. Familiar. One of them was my mug. The chipped one with the faded print that said, "Mondays are murder." I hadn't seen it in over a year. I thought I'd left it at work. How had it ended up here? The person in the chair shifted. A hand rose. Long, pale fingers wrapped in old gauze twitched slightly, then pointed to the wall beside the shelves. There was something scribbled on it, smeared in what looked like soot or ash. "You live above me." I swallowed. "What do you mean?" I whispered. The person in the chair didn't move, but the wall pulsed again, and a new message began to form, like it was sweating words from the pores of its surface. "I'm hungry." I stumbled back, heart racing. Then I saw something I hadn't noticed before. The ceiling, just above the lantern. It had a window, small, square, reinforced with iron. And behind it was my floor. The same pattern, the same grain. That room was directly below my living room. I turned the flashlight upward, heart hammering, and caught my own rug, half folded where I'd pulled it aside. This room wasn't under the house. It was part of it. Just lower, older, hungrier. I looked back at the person in the chair, but the chair was now empty. Something was standing behind me. I turned, and it smiled with my face. It grinned wider than any face should, stretching skin thin over cheekbones. My face, yes, but distorted like someone had copied it from memory and gotten just enough wrong to make it uncanny. Its eyes were black, featureless, absorbing the lantern light. "Don't you recognize me?" it asked in a voice that sounded like mine filtered through a storm drain. I stumbled backward, slamming into the pulsing wall. The thing didn't move. It simply watched. "I've been here longer than you've been alive," it said, waiting under the wood, eating what you forget. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I felt like a marionette, limbs loose, fear pulling my strings. "What are you?" I asked. It tilted its head. "I'm your underneath. Every dropped thought, every missing sock, every strange creak you blamed on the house settling." It stepped closer, bare feet silent on the breathing floor. The wall behind it writhed now, shaping words like flesh forming scars. "You left me." The room went darker, and suddenly we weren't alone. Shapes emerged from the corners, dozens of them. All wrong, all familiar. I saw my childhood teddy bear, stitched eyes replaced with nails. A girl from high school I hadn't thought about in years, her limbs bent backward. My first dog, or something wearing its shape, teeth longer than memory should allow. They circled me. I didn't know, I whispered. The copy of me smiled kindly, almost pitying. No one ever does. It extended a hand. "But you do now, and knowing has a price. I want to leave." You did leave. Years ago. But your body, it forgot to follow. I backed into the wall. It was soft, warm, beating. "Why now?" I asked. It didn't answer. Instead, it turned and pointed at the ceiling window. My living room. There was someone up there, standing above the hatch, staring down. Me, but not quite. The version of me up there was moving differently. Pouring coffee. Humming. It looked like me. It acted like me. But it wasn't me. "That's what happens," the thing whispered. "We trade places. You look down too long. You open the door. Now I get the upstairs." No, no. I lunged at the hatch window, pounded my fists on glass. I saw the version of me look up, but there was no recognition. Just a smile. And it pulled the rug back over the hatch, sealing me in. Darkness swallowed the room. Not sudden, but creeping. Like ink in water, it flowed from the corners inward, dimming the lantern's glow until I could barely see my own hands. The pulsing floor beneath me grew still. The figures in the shadows retreated. Only the copy of me remained, standing inches away. "You won't last long down here," it said. Its smile had faded. "You're too loud, too full of questions. This place eats questions. You'll learn to stop asking eventually." It stepped around me, strolling toward the shelves. It picked up a small item, a wristwatch. Mine, the one I'd lost last summer. It held it up to the flickering lantern, admiring the cracked face. "They all leave things behind," it murmured. "Pieces of themselves." I backed away slowly, searching for any break in the walls. The door was still gone. The hatch far above sealed tight. I was surrounded by soft, living wood that no longer felt like wood at all. "I don't belong here," I said. The copy turned. That's what the last one said. It raised a hand and pointed to the far wall. Another phrase bled into the surface. The first one crawled. I followed its gesture and saw, to my horror, a tunnel, low and narrow, its entrance hidden behind a sliding panel. The walls around it were slick with moisture. It didn't look dug. It looked grown. "You could try that way," the thing offered. "If you really want to leave." "Where does it go?" Another crooked grin. Deeper. I stood there shaking. I couldn't stay, but I couldn't trust it either. My eyes flicked around the room, landing on the shelves. My mug, my wristwatch, and then something new. A photograph. Framed, sitting at the very top. I reached for it. It was of me, taken from above. Asleep in my bed, face turned to the ceiling. It hadn't been taken by me, or by anyone I knew. I turned it over. Scribbled on the back, in faint red ink, were 4 words. "Don't forget to breathe." I dropped the frame and ran toward the tunnel. I didn't know where it led, but it was the only way forward. The copy of me didn't follow. It simply watched, hands clasped behind its back. "Hope you like the dark," it said. I crouched and crawled inside. The passage narrowed almost immediately. I was on my elbows, then my stomach. Dirt pressed against my face. Roots curled around my legs. The tunnel was tight and twisting, lined with hair and old cloth and whispers. I screamed, and something screamed back. The scream that echoed back through the tunnel didn't match my voice. It was higher, wet, like a dying animal that had learned to mimic fear. I froze mid-crawl, chest pressed into damp soil, the space so tight I could barely inhale without scraping my ribs. The tunnel groaned. Something behind me moved. A dragging sound. No footsteps, just the slow, deliberate slide of something pulling itself forward. I pushed ahead, arms burning. My flashlight beam cut through cobwebs and roots, barely illuminating the claustrophobic tube around me. At one point, I passed a doll's head embedded in the dirt, its eyes missing, hair stiff with age. And then I saw light. Faint. Pale. Ahead. I didn't think. I scrambled toward it, every movement frantic, knees and elbows grinding raw. The thing behind me hissed now, low and hateful. I could feel its breath on my heels. I burst through the opening and collapsed into a cavern. I lay on my back, gasping, the walls stretching far above me. The space wasn't natural. It was carved, not with tools but intention. Dozens of alcoves dotted the stone, and inside each one, a person, or the remains of one, all of them curled up, silent. Some had withered completely, clothes turned to rags. Others still breathed, barely, eyes wide, lips moving soundlessly. One reached toward me, fingers bone-thin, skin translucent. "No more stairs," he whispered. "Only down, only deeper." I backed away, slipping on moss-covered rock. The hiss behind me had stopped. I turned toward the tunnel I came from. It had closed, swallowed by the wall like it had never existed. Something rustled behind one of the alcoves. A tall figure emerged, shrouded in damp cloth. It walked like it had never walked before, stumbling, twitching, each movement wrong. It wore my sister's face, warped, empty-eyed, lips sewn shut. I screamed. The cavern answered, not with echoes, but with laughter. Voices spilled from every alcove, soft and knowing. They whisper my name. Childhood songs, secrets I never told anyone. My mother's voice saying, "You'll forget me someday." My father's voice asking, "What happened to my tools?" Each voice was mine but wrong. I collapsed, hands over my ears, tears streaming down my face. The laughter faded slowly. The air grew cold again. Still. Then, a light appeared. A door. Wooden. Plain. Sitting in the far wall of the cavern like it had always been there. Above it, carved into the stone. Forgotten but not gone. And a doorknob. Warm, even for where I stood. I rose and walked toward it. The doorknob pulsed in my hand like a heartbeat. Not fast, but heavy, steady, ancient. I hesitated, fingers trembling, my palms sweaty against the smooth brass. Behind me, the whispers had gone silent. The withered bodies in their alcoves didn't move. It felt like the whole room was holding its breath. I turned the knob. The door opened soundlessly, revealing not another tunnel or chamber, but my living room. As it had been before I found the hatch. The rug was flat and clean. My coffee cup sat upright on the table, unspilled. The window let in soft daylight. It was exactly as it should be, but I didn't trust it. I stepped through slowly, eyes scanning every corner. Everything felt real, smelled real. I walked over to the couch, sat, and let out a shaky breath. The hatch was gone. I peeled back the rug, solid floorboards. No hingis, no seams. Had I imagined it all? I reached for my phone. Full signal. No missed calls or texts. Except one. From an unknown number. Don't let it fool you. You're still inside. I dropped the phone. The room darkened slightly. I turned toward the kitchen and froze. The figure from before, the one with my face, was standing behind the counter, pouring coffee into my favorite mug. It looked up, smiled, and raised the cup in a mock toast. "You're adjusting faster than most," it said. "What is this?" I whispered. "Am I dreaming?" "No," it replied. "You're remembering." It walked around the couch and sat across from me. "You opened the door. You accepted the exchange. The upstairs is mine now. You're welcome to stay here." I shook my head. "No, this isn't real. I never agreed to any of this." It chuckled. "You opened it. That was all the permission we needed. I stood to run, but the room began shifting, walls twisting slightly, paintings bending, colors dimming. The light outside the window flickered like a faulty bulb. "You'll be fine," it said. "Eventually. This room is yours now." It leaned forward, "Until someone else finds the hatch." "No, I'll get out. You won't," it said gently. "No one does." It stood, walked to the hallway, and paused. "Enjoy your stay," it said. "Keep the floor clean." And with that, it vanished around the corner. I was alone, and when I checked the front door, it led only to more rooms. Endless, shifting rooms, none with exits. And every now and then, I hear someone walking above me. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't move right anymore. The clocks tick but never change. The food doesn't spoil. The coffee's always warm, but I never drink it. Every night, I hear footsteps. Slow, deliberate, pacing above me. Sometimes 2 sets, sometimes more. They don't sound like mine anymore. I keep trying to write this down to warn someone. I leave notes under rugs and sidewalls. Maybe someday someone will find them. Maybe you will. If you do, please, don't open the door. Don't lift the rug. Don't listen when the floor whispers your name. Because once you know it's there, it knows you too. And it's always, always hungry. Story 6. I found a box that ticks where time doesn't. Ukosititsa boksoklokas. There's a trail behind my apartment complex that no one uses. It's narrow and overgrown, barely visible unless you're really looking for it. I never paid attention to it. Just assumed it was a deer path or an old utility line cut through the trees. Until last Tuesday, I was walking my dog, Murphy, late, closer to midnight than I'd like to admit. He's a stubborn old mutt who insists on long walks no matter how dark it is. We took our usual loop around the retention pond, and were headed back when he stopped. Just stopped cold at the tree line. I tugged his leash. "Come on, Murphy." Not now, but he wouldn't move. He just stared at the woods, ears flat, tail stiff. Then I heard it too. A ticking, faint but sharp, like a pocket watch, rhythmic and steady. It wasn't a bug or a sprinkler. It had intent. Curious and annoyed, I stepped closer to the trees. The trail was barely a trail at all, just bent grass and shadows. But Murphy followed reluctantly. The ticking grew louder. After maybe 50 feet, I saw something half buried in the dirt. A wooden box. Old, about the size of a shoebox. Its surface was covered in what looked like burn marks or carved symbols. Circles, crosses, and tiny notches. But the strangest part was that it ticked. Loudly, I knelt and brushed away the dirt. No hindis, no dutch. It seemed sealed shut, but the ticking came from inside, echoing through the wood. Murphy whined. I should have left it there, but I didn't. I took it home. Once inside, I placed it on the kitchen table and just stared at it. The sound was hypnotic. It didn't match the seconds of the wall clock. It was offbeat, slower, but heavier, like it counted something more important. After an hour of Googling everything from ancient ticking box to weird trails behind apartments, I gave up. I figured I'd try to pry it open in the morning. But when I woke up, it was already open, not like a lid had lifted. Just gone. A space now hollow where it was once sealed. And inside, nothing. No ticking, no mechanism, just a shallow interior lined with black velvet. I picked it up and turned it over. It was lighter than I remembered, almost empty. But then the ticking started again, soft this time, from behind me. Ispun, expecting, I don't know, a clock? But the room was empty. Then I noticed something worse. The time on my wall clock hadn't changed since last night. It still read 12:14 a.m. At first, I assumed the wall clock had just died. Maybe the battery was out. I took it down, popped open the back. Fresh batteries. I checked my phone. It still read 12:14 a.m. My laptop? Same. Even the microwave, which I'd never bothered to set, had somehow synced 12:14 a.m. I stared at them all in disbelief. My heart pounded, throat tightening. I reached for my phone and tried opening a browser. It froze halfway, loading the home page, and crashed. When I reopened it, the date said January 1st, 1900. Murphy barked from the living room. I rushed in and found him staring at the wall, ears pinned, hackles raised. The ticking was louder now, not coming from the box anymore. From everywhere. like the walls themselves were vibrating in rhythm. Then I noticed the light outside. It was wrong. Not daylight, not moonlight. A strange, coppery glow. I peeked through the blinds. The parking lot was gone. Where asphalt had been, there was now a field of tall, black grass swaying in slow motion, like underwater kelp. The street lamps stood like withered trees, bent and rusted. And hovering low over the field, pulsing like a heartbeat, was a massive clock face suspended in the sky. No numbers, just hands, long rusted, ticking slowly backward. Each click sent a tremor through my chest. Murphy barked again, louder this time. I turned. The box was gone. Not just moved. Gone. Table cleared. No dust ring. No impression in the velvet cloth I'd set it on. Then the knocking started. 3 soft taps at the door. I crept toward it, every hair on my arms rising. I didn't want to open it. I knew I shouldn't, but my hand moved on its own. I undid the chain, turned the knob, and pulled it open a crack. No one was there. Just fog. Thick, swirling gray fog that smelled like scorched paper and copper. I shut the door and found the box sitting on the kitchen table again. Lit shield. Ticked steady. But this time, there was something new carved into the wood. Second chance. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat and listened. Eventually, the ticking slowed. At exactly 6 a.m., everything snapped back. The light. The clocks. The field vanished, replaced by the familiar view of garbage bins and faded pavement. Everything was normal again, but I knew it wasn't over. Because later that day, at 12:14 a.m. exactly, the box opened on its own again, and inside was a photograph of me, asleep in bed, from a perspective no one should have had. The photo chilled me more than anything so far. It wasn't just that it was a picture of me. I'd had roommates before, friends who pranked me, a weird cousin who liked photography. But this wasn't some old snapshot dug up from a shoebox. I'd gone to bed alone. I'd locked the doors, shut the blinds, kept Murphy close, and yet there I was clearly asleep on my side, the blanket folded down, just like I always leave it, Murphy curled up at my feet. But the angle, it was above me, slightly to the left, like someone or something had taken it while floating over my bed. I flipped the photo over. No writing this time, just a thin black smear across the back like soot. Murphy growled again. His head was pointed at the window this time. I went over and pulled the curtain back an inch. It wasn't my apartment complex anymore. Where the buildings had been were now crooked, leaning versions of them, still recognizable but wrong, warped in impossible ways. Like reflections on the surface of rippling water. The same twisted field lay beyond the buildings, and that copper light, always dim, never fully dark, bathed everything in a dull, nauseous glow. The ticking grew louder again, and I realized it wasn't just ticking, it was counting. 1, 2, 3, then silence. Then again, 1, 2, 3, like something was waiting for me to do the same. I ran into the kitchen to grab the box again. If this thing was causing it, maybe destroying it would stop whatever was happening. But it wasn't there. Instead, in its place sat another photo. This one was on my front door, slightly ajar. And peeking from behind, it was something I can barely describe. It had my eyes, my clothes, but the skin was wrong, waxen and tight, like it had been painted on. Its teeth were too many. It smiled too wide. I heard a creak. The front door was now open. Just a crack. Enough to let in the fog. I slammed it shut, locked the deadbolt, and backed away. The box was back on the table, ticking faster now. I grabbed it, stormed into the hallway, and opened the stairwell door to throw it down the garbage chute. But there was no stairwell anymore. Only darkness, and the faint ticking, growing fainter still, echoing from deep below. I looked down and saw movement in the dark, like hundreds of arms reaching upward, slow, patient, and beckoning. That night, I slept with every light on. At 12:14 a.m., the power went out. The ticking never did. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The ticking filled the apartment like water rising in a sealed room. I couldn't tell where it was coming from anymore. It wasn't the box. It was in the walls, under the floor, humming behind every outlet. At 2 a.m., the apartment changed again. Not gradually, not with warning, One second, I was sitting on the couch with Murphy pressed into my side, flashlight in hand, every light dead. The next, I was standing in a hallway that shouldn't exist. I don't mean a different hallway. I mean, mine was gone. This one was longer than the building allowed, with wallpaper the color of old teeth and floorboards that moaned with every breath. Dim ceiling lights buzzed faintly overhead, flickering like dying stars. Every door along the hall was numbered, but they weren't numbers I recognized. They looked like time, bent into strange shapes. 03:17, 22:46 contour integral. Midnight. I walked. I didn't know what else to do. The hallway bent in impossible ways. Upward, sideways, corkscrewing without motion. Murphy stayed close, silent but alert. He sniffed each door we passed but didn't stop. Until one did. 12:14. The plaque shimmered faintly, almost alive. Murphy froze, whined. Then the door creaked open. Inside was a room I recognized instantly, my bedroom. The layout, the furniture, the unmade bed. But twisted. The walls were warped inward. The ceiling sagged. The light was dim and reddish, like it came through layers of blood-soaked cloth. And in the bed was me, sleeping. Same position, same pajamas, same face twisted into a grimace like I was lost in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I stepped forward. My copy twitched. Eyes fluttered, then opened. But they weren't mine. Too many irises. Too many pupils. All black. It sat up in bed, slowly, and stared at me. Then it smiled. Not malicious. Not monstrous. Worse. Pitying. "I thought you'd be earlier," it said. I backed out of the room. The door closed itself behind me. The plaque now read, "Occupied." I ran. I turned corner after corner, never seeing the same one twice. At some point, I tripped, fell forward, hit the floor, and when I looked up, I was back in my apartment. Everything looked normal. Murphy barked at my side. The lights were back on, and the ticking had stopped. The box sat on the kitchen table again, lit open. Inside was a key, and underneath it, carved into the velvet lining, "Third visit. Entry required." I didn't touch the key. Not right away. It just lay there. Simple, brass, old-fashioned. The kind you'd use on a trunk, not a door. But the way it sat in the box, perfectly fitted in the velvet, made it feel sacred. Like something meant to be found at the exact right moment. Murphy wouldn't stop growling at it. I walked away, closed the box, shoved it in the freezer, for reasons I couldn't even explain. Maybe cold would stop it. Maybe I just needed to feel like I was in control again. I tried calling people. No signal. Tried driving. My car wouldn't start. No power. No nothing. The streets outside looked almost right, but the shadows were too long, and the sun was fixed in place like it had been nailed to the sky. I walked 2 blocks and ended up back at my front door. Time had curled in on itself. Eventually, I gave in. Took the box out. The key was warm. I held it in my palm for a long time, feeling the tick beneath my skin return. Then the knock came again. 3 soft taps, but not at the front door this time. At the bedroom closet. I turned the handle with shaking fingers. The inside of the closet had changed. Gone are my clothes, the storage bins, the dusty floor. Now it was bricked in deep red stone, like an old cellar, but the bricks pulsed with soft light, like embers under ash. And at the far end, embedded into the stone wall, was a keyhole. The key in my hand hummed. I stepped inside. The closet stretched longer the further I walked. And as I reached the far wall, the keyhole shimmered. I hesitated, but something in me knew this was the third visit. This was what the box wanted. I slid the key in. It turned with a sound like grinding teeth. The wall split open vertically, revealing stairs. Always stairs. I descended. The deeper I went, the more I heard it. The ticking, louder than ever, but also more personal. Like it was keeping time not with seconds, but with memories. With each step, a new one bloomed in my mind. My 7th birthday. My grandmother's funeral. The first time I saw Murphy. The moment I found the box. It was counting me. At the bottom of the stairs was a chamber. Circular. Black stone walls. And in the center, suspended above the floor, was a massive clock with no hands. Only a face. And that face was mine. Eyes closed. Mouth twitching. And as I stepped forward, its eyes opened. The face in the clock blinked slowly, like waking from a long sleep. My sleep. Its expression mirrored my own confusion, fear, even a flicker of recognition. But it wasn't a reflection. It moved on its own, as if it had learned how to be me. The walls of the chamber pulsed with every tick, casting elongated shadows in strange angles. Murphy growled at my side, tail between his legs, but didn't flee. I stepped forward, the ticking syncing perfectly with my heartbeat. And then the clock face spoke. "You are late." Its voice was my voice, but deeper, timeless, echoing across decades. I swallowed. "What is this place?" It ignored the question. "You carried the box. You saw the field. You heard the counting. That was the test." I felt cold seep into my bones. "Test for what?" "To see if you remembered." "Remembered what?" "That you've done this before." The word struck like thunder. "No, this is my first." The ticking stopped, and the silence was worse. Images crashed into my mind. Flashes. Fractured scenes. A hallway of doors with shifting plaques. The warped field. My bedroom door opening by itself. A spiral staircase, carved from bone. Holding a different box, metal instead of wood. I had done this. More than once. The box. It always found me. It wasn't about summoning something. It was about recognizing something I'd forgotten. That time itself was a loop. That I'd been circling this path again and again, each version of me left behind to sleep while a new one woke up. The clock face blinked again. "You have broken the surface 7 times. What happens now?" "You decide." It split down the middle, revealing a small shelf inside. 2 items rested there, a match and a smaller box, identical in shape, but pure black with silver edges. Its ticking was softer, like a whisper instead of a pulse. The match had something carved into its wood. "Burn it and stay free." The box had a note attached. "Open it and remember everything." I stood there, torn. The fire would end it. I felt that truth deep in my blood. No more loops. No more visits. Just silence. Peace. But the box. It called to me. "I can't decide," I said aloud. "You already have," said the voice in the walls. And when I looked down, the match was gone. Only the box remained in my hands. Its lid slid open on its own. Inside was a ticking heart. My heart, still beating, still counting down. The heartbeat slowly inside the box. Not metaphorically, literally. A human heart, the size of my fist, pulsing in rhythm with my own chest. I staggered back, nearly dropping it, but the velvet lining seemed to cling to my palms. It didn't want me to let go. Murphy whimpered and pressed himself against my leg. I couldn't take my eyes off the thing. It was wrong, not grotesque, but familiar. I recognized the shape, the faint scar across the top. It was my heart. And yet, here I stood. I looked back at the clock embedded in the chamber wall. My face stared back, now smiling faintly. Not menacing, just knowing. "You're catching up," it said. "To what?" "To yourself." The wall shifted, literally. A slow grinding revealed the circular chamber was rotating, doors peeling open like flower petals. Each one led to a different place, versions of rooms I remembered but didn't fully know. A childhood bedroom with stars on the ceiling. An alley behind a diner I used to visit at 2 a.m. A hospital room for bags hanging still in the air. A subway station frozen mid-arrival, the train hovering inches off the tracks. Each scene hung in time, motionless, as if paused between seconds. "This is memory," the voice said. "Yours. Unfiltered." I stepped toward the childhood room. I recognized the bed sheets, the old bookshelf, the toy soldier missing an arm. Why show me this? Because you're unraveling. And when you've unraveled enough, the ticking stops. I turned toward the clock. Then what happens? You wake up. The box in my hands trembled. The heart beat faster. And something inside me stopped. A sensation I can't describe, like losing time, falling inward. I looked down and realized my chest felt lighter. Hollow. The box had taken my heartbeat. Or maybe it had always had it. I stumbled. Murphy barked, growling now at the door closest to us, the hospital room. Something inside moved. I peered through the doorway and saw a figure in the bed, hooked to machines, unmoving. It was me, pale, comatose. eyes open, staring upward with no recognition. I stepped closer. The machines began to beep, slow at first, then rising in tempo. The same beat as the box. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't walking halls beneath time. I was trapped inside my own mind. The ticking? My final seconds. Looping. Trying to warn myself. Trying to wake me up. I dropped the box. The heartbeat stopped. The doors slammed shut. The clock face faded, and the chamber went silent. Then a breath. Not from the room. From me. I gasped, really gasped. My eyes opened in a hospital bed. White ceiling tiles. Faint beeping. For my arm. Murphy asleep at my feet. I'd been in a coma for 6 days. Galaxidon. Blunt head trauma. They said I was lucky to wake up. But I know the truth. Something traded places with me in the dark. Because every night since, I hear the ticking again. And when I look in the mirror, sometimes my reflection smiles before I do. Story 7. The theater doesn't let me leave after closing. I started working nights at the Mayfield Theater because I needed the money. It was one of those old places, the kind that smells like velvet and dust, with murals of angels on the ceiling and chandeliers that tinkle even when there's no breeze. No one really goes to the Mayfield anymore. It only shows old films, black and white classics, once a month indie screenings. My job was simple. Take tickets, sell stale popcorn, and lock up after the last movie ended. I was the only staff on duty after 10 p.m. That was fine by me, until last Friday night. I just finished sweeping Theater 3, a long, narrow screening room with red gold seats and curtains that never quite closed right. The movie had ended, the handful of guests had trickled out, and I was locking up the concession stand when I heard a noise behind me. A cough. It came from Theater 3. I froze. I hadn't seen anyone linger. I'm meticulous about checking before locking each room, especially Theater 3, since it's the farthest from the lobby and creepiest when empty. Still, I grabbed my flashlight and headed back down the hallway. The door to Theater 3 was open. I know I closed it. I stepped inside. The screen was still dark, the only light coming from the dim aisle bulbs along the floor. Rows of empty seats faced the blank screen. "Hello," I called softly. No answer. But then I saw movement, a shape in the last row, someone sitting upright, completely still. "Sir? Ma'am? We're closed." They didn't respond. I stepped closer. "I'll have to ask you to leave. I'm locking up." Still no response. When I got within a few feet, I realized something was off. The person in the seat wasn't just still, they were rigid, like a mannequin, dressed in outdated clothes, pale, unmoving, and their mouth was stitched shut. I stumbled back, heart racing. I turned to run, only to find the door had closed behind me. I lunged at it, yanked the handle. It wouldn't budge. The lights dimmed further. The screen flickered to life, black and white static. Then an image appeared. The theater, empty rows. Then slowly, each seat filled by versions of that same pale figure. Dozens of them, mouths stitched, eyes wide, all facing the screen, all facing me. I backed down the aisle, eyes locked on the screen. The static hissed like a living thing. Figures continued to appear in the seats, row by row, until the theater was packed with unmoving bodies. Each one pale, each one stitched, none of them blinking. The figure in the last row was gone. The seat it had occupied was empty now. I turned to the exit again, gripped the handle with both hands, and pulled with everything I had. It swung open like it had never been locked. Cold air rushed in from the hallway. I didn't wait. I bolted straight for the lobby, keys jingling in my pocket, heart threatening to punch through my ribs. I locked every door on the way out. Theater 1, 2, 3, double-checked them all, then fled out the front doors without even turning off the lights. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't tell anyone either. What could I say? "Hey, boss, Theater 3 is haunted and the dead like to watch reruns." The next night, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation. Shadows. A prank, maybe. But part of me didn't believe that. Still, I came back. I needed the paycheck. Everything was normal at first. But when the last movie ended and a handful of guests shuffled out, I felt it again. That pressure, like the air had thickened around me. I locked up quickly. Theater 1. Theater 2. then stood outside Theater 3. Door shut. Lights off. I reached for the handle, paused, and then, from behind the curtain inside, I heard something. Applause. Slow. Sarcastic. Clap. 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 It didn't stop. I backed away. The door remained shut, but the sound bled through it. I turned and ran to the manager's office. I didn't even lock up properly. I just grabbed my things and fled. I told myself I'd quit in the morning, but I didn't. Something made me come back. I started avoiding Theater 3 entirely. Pretended I'd already cleaned it. Pretended the door was stuck. But the theater didn't like that. I found notes in my locker. Slips of torn ticket stubs with words scribbled on them. You forgot row F. They're still watching. One more show. I started seeing shadows behind the curtains. Reflections in the display cases that didn't match my own. And last night, when I closed up, Theater 3 was unlocked. I know I locked it. Inside, the seats were full, but not with stitched people. They were filled with versions of me, all staring at the screen, all mouthing something silently. In perfect sync, I ran. I didn't try to make sense of it. I didn't go back for my coat or the closing paperwork or the lights. I just turned around and sprinted through the lobby and into the cold. Murphy, the theater cat, was waiting by the exit like always. He stared at me, unmoving, his tail flicking once. As I opened the door, he hissed. Not at me, at something behind me. I didn't turn around. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my apartment, lights on, TV blaring static to drown the silence. Every time I blinked, I saw the other versions of me, rows of them shifting slightly in the flickering screen glow. The worst part? One of them turned and looked directly at me before I ran. The next morning, I told my manager I was quitting. He just stared at me. No one's worked nights here in over a year, he said. I laughed, nervously, thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. He opened a binder and flipped through the schedule. My name wasn't there. Not once. I come in at night, I insisted. Every night this month. He shook his head. You've only been scheduled for day shifts. I locked up. I swept. I sold tickets. I lock up, he interrupted. Always have. I walked out of the office in a daze. I had texts from friends, messages, calls I missed, all of them time-stamped during my supposed night shifts. One message stood out. It was a photo, sent from my own number. It was the theater lobby, empty, except for me, staring directly into the camera. I didn't take it. That night, I swore I wouldn't go back. I unplugged my alarm, turned off my phone, locked the doors. At 9:45 p.m., someone knocked. 3 soft taps. I didn't answer. At 9:48 p.m., the Mayfield's lobby music started playing inside my apartment. The soft, distorted instrumental version of Singin' in the Rain that always loops on closing time. I turned toward the sound, and my hallway was gone, replaced by red velvet carpet, curtains, and a blinking marquee that read, Final showing. 1 seat left. I stood frozen, staring into the hallway that wasn't a hallway anymore. Theater carpet stretched out before me, impossibly long, bordered by flickering golden sconces. I turned back to where my bedroom had been. Only darkness now, and silence, except for the soft swish-swish of curtains parting somewhere ahead. Something wanted me to go. I stepped forward. The hallway didn't end. It just bent subtly like I was being drawn in a spiral. No doors, no signs, just that same patterned carpet and the music, now warped, slowed down like a vinyl left in the sun. I don't know how long I walked. Minutes? Hours? Eventually, I came to a doorway. Theater 3. The same brass plaque. The same crack down the wooden frame I'd walked past 100 times. I reached out, hesitated, then pushed the door open. It groaned. Inside was not Theater 3. Not exactly. The room was wider, the ceiling higher, the screen larger. Every seat was occupied. Dozens of versions of me, dressed in all the clothes I'd worn over the last month. Slouched, tense, bored, alert. Some were dead. I don't mean slumped over. I mean visibly dead. Blue-lipped, eyes sunken, skin slack and gray. And all of them turned when I entered. In perfect unison. They didn't speak. They just stared, tilting their heads, twitching slightly as if on delay. The screen lit up and showed a loop of me entering the theater, over and over and over. Slight variations. Sometimes I ran, sometimes I cried, sometimes I was dragged in backward by something off screen. But the ending was always the same. I took a seat and sat and watched. One of the dead versions of me rose. Its mouth opened, not stitched like the others I'd seen before, and it screamed. The room didn't echo. Instead, it vibrated. The walls shimmered like heat waves. The chandeliers buzzed and cracked. Murphy leapt onto the armrest beside me, yowling. Yes, Murphy was there, alive, real, and staring behind me. I turned. A curtain was being drawn back behind the last row. Beyond it, only mirrors. Hundreds of them. But they didn't show the theater. They showed my apartment, my bathroom, my bed, the reflection of myself sleeping, shaving, blinking, always from behind me. I stepped toward the mirror, and my reflection stayed seated. The me in the mirror just kept watching the screen. Then it smiled, and behind me, a row of the other me's stood. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Something primal inside me screamed that if I looked, truly looked, at the row of me's rising behind me, I wouldn't survive whatever came next. So I faced the mirror instead. It was warped glass, tinted slightly green, the kind you'd find in an old funhouse. But the images were too precise, too vivid. The version of me seated in my apartment was reading a book I hadn't picked up in months. And yet, I could feel its pages in my hands, smell the old paper. The sensation was real. I blinked. The version of me didn't. I reached out to touch the mirror. My fingers passed through. On the other side, it was cold, wet, like moving through gelatin or dense fog. I leaned in, just enough to feel the pull. Behind me, footsteps. Slow, barefoot, dozens of them. One of the reflections broke away from the group and moved closer to the mirror. It wasn't me. Not exactly. Its skin had a waxy sheen. Its eyes too wide. It smiled wider than a human mouth should. "You can't leave after the show starts," it said. Its voice echoed, but not in the room. In my head, I pulled my hand back, but it was too late. The mirror rippled, and I was yanked through. Suddenly, I was seated, not in the mirror room, not in Theater 3, but in the front row. Lights down, curtains open. The screen in front of me flickered on, black and white. A theater lobby, empty. Then the door swung open, and I stepped in. I watched myself go through the same motions. Lock up, clean, check Theater 3. And then, on screen, I noticed something terrifying. The movie me looked right at me. Like the screen was a window. Then I heard a voice beside me. "You missed your cue." It was a man in a tuxedo, old-fashioned, with eyes like smoked glass and gloves too small for his long fingers. He handed me a playbill. Only one line of text inside. "You are the feature tonight." I looked up. Every version of me in the seats turned toward the screen, mouths opening in unison. And they began to hum. Low, toneless, endless. I stood, ran. The aisle stretched like rubber. No exitors, no signs. Just the long, velvet tunnel I'd walked before. I kept moving, Murphy at my side, though I don't remember calling him. Behind me, the humming grew louder. Higher. Reality began to bend. The curtains at the screen's edge billowed, though there was no wind. And the mirror was ahead of me again. But now it was dark, reflecting nothing. I stared into the mirror, waiting for my reflection to return. But it didn't. There was no image, just blackness, like staring down a bottomless well. I felt Murphy press against my leg, trembling. He wouldn't look at the glass, wouldn't move closer. Behind us, the humming rose to a pitch I didn't think possible. It wasn't just sound. It was pressure crushing against my ears, behind my eyes, inside my bones. My vision blurred. The velvet beneath my feet began to ripple like liquid, stretching in every direction. I took a breath and stepped into the dark mirror. Cold. Nothingness. Then, I was somewhere else. Back in the projection room. Theater 3. Dusty reels. The software of machines. The tiny window that looked out over the theater below. But I wasn't alone. The projectionist was there. An old man, hollow-eyed, wearing a vest and bow tie caked in ash. He turned slowly, hands resting on a canister of film. "You're earlier this time," he said without smiling. I don't understand." "You will." He handed me the reel. No label, just a sticky note that read, "Do not show." He pointed at the projector. You still have a choice. I looked through the window. The theater was packed. All versions of me. Some twisted, some asleep, some rotting. All waiting. Watching. I asked the projectionist, what happens if I play it? You stay. And if I don't, you forget. I glanced at Murphy. He stared at me, eyes wide, tail down. He wanted to leave. So did I. But I knew deep down, I never had. I set the reel on the table. Tur to go. And the door vanished. The walls melted into red curtains again. Murphy growled. From behind one curtain, a hand emerged. My hand, but longer, paler, as if stretched by time. It held a remote. And pressed play. The screen above the stage lit up. This time it showed my bedroom. Tonight, me asleep. Murphy curled beside me. A figure standing in the corner. Watching. It wore my face. And in its hand, a single movie ticket. I turned to run. But all the seats were empty now. Every version of me was gone. Except the one in the projection. And he began to smile. I screamed. Not out loud, I think, but deep inside, something uncoiled and howled in a part of me that had never known fear until now. I backed away from the screen. The room melted around me. Not figuratively, literally. Velvet dripping like blood, walls dissolving into static. The air smelled like old film burning, and the floor crumbled beneath my feet, exposing reels of tape that writhed like snakes. Murphy barked once, sharp and panicked, and then vanished. I spun around. Nothing but endless seats, all facing the screen, all empty. I was alone now. The screen showed my apartment still, but now I could hear it. Breathing. My breathing. Not from me. From the version of me standing in the corner of my bedroom. It stepped forward. The image became clearer. Its face was cracked, porcelain-like, leaking shadow. Its eyes rolled white, but it never blinked. It held the movie ticket in one hand, and in the other, the remote. It turned to the screen and waved at me. I turned and ran through the rows. My feet didn't hit anything, just the illusion of carpet, now stretching like cloth beneath my weight. The theater ceiling arched above me like a cathedral, now impossibly tall, stars blinking in the blackness. Doors lined the walls, each one marked with titles. Scene 1, Acceptance. Scene 2, Resistance. Scene 3, Recurrence. Scene 4, You. I grabbed the handle of the nearest one. Scene 4, You, and pulled. Behind it was my living room. Untouched, morning light pouring through. I stepped in, and something clicked. The screen behind me shut off. The breathing stopped, and in my hand was a torn movie stub. I collapsed onto the floor, dizzy, aching, trembling. Murphy leapt into my lap, real this time. I hugged him like a life raft. The window beside us showed a gray, quiet street. I was home. I'd left the theater. Idi Escobat. But when I looked up at the television across the room, it turned on by itself and displayed one message in glowing white letters. Thank you for attending the final showing. A new stub appeared on my coffee table. Dated tomorrow. Showtime, 12:13 a.m. Seat, F3. And from behind the curtain of my hallway, I heard the first faint note of music begin again. It's 12:12 a.m. now. Murphy won't stop growling at the hallway curtain. The music's louder. The stub on the table has changed. Now it says non-transferable. My phone only shows static when I try to call anyone. I check my bathroom mirror. My reflection blinked after I did. I think the theater is here again. Not down the street. Not across town. Here. In my apartment. Behind the curtain. And I wanted to take my seat. The TV screen is glowing. The playbill sits beside the stub. There's only one line now. You never left. The lights just dimmed. The show is about to begin. And my seat is still empty. Story 8. The sky isn't where it used to be. Ukosatitsa paliskayachev. I don't know how else to say it. The sky moved. Not the clouds. Not the stars. The entire sky. I noticed it 2 weeks ago. I was out back with my telescope, hoping to catch the Andromeda Galaxy on a clear night. I've done this for years. Star charts, notebooks, everything. I know where the constellations should be. I know how long it takes the Earth to rotate. I know what I'm looking at. But that night, Andromeda was gone. Not just hard to find, missing. I checked every coordinate, every nearby star field. Nothing. It was like the patch of space where it should have been wiped clean. I chalked it up to light pollution, a faulty scope, tired eyes. Packed it up and went inside. But the next night was worse. The Big Dipper was tilted wrong. I don't mean rotated, bent like someone had tried to redraw it and gotten lazy with the lines. Polaris, the North Star, wasn't where it should have been at all. It had shifted by several degrees. I double-checked my gear. Nothing wrong. I used my phone app. The app said the stars were where they should be. But when I held the phone up to the sky, the app didn't match reality. The stars didn't match the stars. My wife laughed when I told her. Maybe the aliens moved things around for fun, she said. She's a good sport, always has been. But I saw it in her eyes. She didn't believe me. She thought I was miscalculating, or maybe imagining it. Then other things started changing. Subtle at first. The moon was the wrong size. Sunrise came 7 minutes early, then 10. Birds started flying in strange formations, tight spirals like they were trying to drill upward into something. And the clouds started forming shapes. Not animals, not faces, something stranger, like symbols I couldn't read, patterns that gave me headaches if I stared too long. I went online. Most people mocked it. A few claimed to notice it too. There's a subreddit, r/sky shift, barely moderated, mostly hoaxes and blurry photos. But last week, someone posted a time-lapse video of the night sky from their roof. Over 9 hours, the stars visibly rearranged themselves, sliding, not rotating. No natural movement. The constellations literally rewrote themselves. The post vanished an hour later. The account was deleted. Now, when I search the subreddit, I get a 404-page and a message. This community has been removed for violating site policies. But I still have the video. I downloaded it. I watched it again last night. Paused at the exact moment the stars begin to move. And in the frame, barely visible in the far upper corner, there was a shape, a ripple in the blackness, like a curtain being pulled. And behind it, an eye, watching us. I couldn't sleep after seeing the eye. Not just because of fear, but because I was afraid if I did sleep, I'd miss more changes. So I sat by the window all night with my telescope and binoculars, sketch pad on my lap, thermos of coffee at my feet. Around 2 a.m., the stars began to shift again. At first, it was subtle, just a slow, unnoticeable drift. But as the minutes passed, I realized it wasn't rotation. It wasn't anything like orbital motion. It was like someone was dragging the fabric of space itself across the sky. I saw constellations merge. Stars vanish like dead pixels. Some stars blinked, then pulsed, then didn't reappear. At 3:12 a.m., everything froze. No movement, not being cleaned, just complete stillness. Then the sky shuddered. It rippled, as if a stone had been dropped into the atmosphere. Not a sound in the world. The crickets stopped. The wind died. My own breath felt too loud. And then came the hum. Low, deep, vibrating through the earth. It made my fillings ache. My wife came down the stairs groggy-eyed, asking what was wrong. I gestured at the window. She looked. I watched her expression shift from confusion to unease. What is that?" she whispered. I didn't answer. We watched as something passed over the moon. Not in front of it, over it. Like a shadow pulling upward from inside, flipping inside out across its surface. For a moment, the moon was gone, replaced by a flat, black disk. A perfect circle. No texture, no dips. Then it blinked. I swear to God, the moon blinked. When the light returned, it wasn't the same. It was smoother, honglili, like a projection. My wife stepped back. "This isn't right," she said. She didn't sleep either. The next day, the news said nothing. Not a single mention of anomalies. No reports. No time changes. Except when I looked up the time of sunrise on 3 different weather apps. Each one gave a different number. None of them matched when the sun actually rose. I emailed an astronomer I used to chat with in a science forum. He replied once, "I'm not supposed to talk about this, but you're not wrong. It started 3 months ago in the southern hemisphere. Some kind of displacement. They're calling it the fold, but they won't go public. Too dangerous." That was all he said. I messaged back. No reply. His account was deleted the next morning. My wife begged me to stop looking. She said I was unraveling. and maybe I was. But the sky wasn't right. Even she knew it. Last night, I took a photo of Orion. When I looked at the picture, it was a spiral. Orion's belt twisted, wrapped around itself like a helix. And in the center was something coming through. I didn't know how to describe it. The thing in the spiral, it wasn't a star. It wasn't even a shape. It was more like a gap, like part of the image had been chewed out, and behind that tear was something darker than the sky itself. Not black, but absence. And the spiral around, it wasn't just warping the constellation. It was pulling at it. I stared at the photo for hours, zooming in until the pixels bled into each other. At maximum zoom, I saw threads. Thin, hair-like strands reaching out from the void toward the stars surrounding it. I watched them for 10 minutes straight. They moved. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until my vision started to blur. That night, I woke up to find my wife sitting bolt upright in bed. "The moon's wrong again," she said. I looked out the window. It wasn't the moon. It was the spiral, low in the sky, hovering just above the horizon, like it had descended. Faint lines rotated slowly around it, like clock hands without a face. And that dark eye in the center, God, it was wider. Staring, aware. The spiral pulsed. The windows shook. Our dog began to howl downstairs. A long, unbroken sound like mourning. I looked back at the bed. My wife was lying down again, but her eyes were open, wide, unblinking. I shook her. She didn't move, didn't breathe, but her pulse was steady. Just paused for 3 full minutes. Then she gasped awake like someone pulled her from underwater. She didn't remember any of it. Didn't believe me when I told her what happened. But the next night, she refused to go to bed. We stayed up together, watching the spiral slowly spin above the hills behind our house. It blinked every few minutes now, a visible, rhythmic flicker. Each blink seemed to change something. A tree would be gone. A cloud would reverse direction. A neighbor's porch light would vanish. Birds flew upward toward the spiral, disappearing into the coils like dust into a drain. I kept trying to document it. Videos, time-lapse, stills. Everything came out blank. Even my own sketches faded within an hour. The pencil just vanished from the paper. My laptop crashed when I tried to type notes. The files wouldn't save. I realized then that whatever this thing is, it doesn't want to be recorded. It doesn't want to be remembered. The sky's not just shifting. It's editing, rewriting itself, and anything that tries to define it. Even language struggles now. Words flicker in my mind. Time runs strange. It's hard to tell what night it is. My clock spins forward, then backward. My phone resets to factory settings every morning. My notebook contains pages I don't remember writing. Most are blank, but a few contain a phrase over and over. It's watching. Don't look back. I started sleeping during the day. Not by choice, but because something in the air at night makes it impossible. Not just the spiral. Everything around it feels wrong. The hum vibrates through the house now. It doesn't come from outside. It comes from above, but also from below, like the earth itself is echoing back whatever's speaking. My dreams are worse. They're not dreams, exactly. More like messages. Every time I close my eyes, I see a red field under a black sky. No stars, no wind, just rows of people all staring upward with bleeding eyes and open mouths. They don't move, don't blink. Then one by one, they begin to float upward. Slowly, limbs limp like puppets. They rise into the spiral. When I wake up, I hear faint whispering in the corner of the room. Always the same 3 words. Each shows you. I've stopped going outside at night. The last time I did, the sky responded. I took a step onto the grass, and everything paused. Crickets stopped. My breath fogged unnaturally in the warm air. The stars above me shifted again. Not slowly this time, but with violent jerks like chess pieces being swept off a board. The spiral flared once, bright red, like a wound tearing open. And then the clouds parted, and I saw the sky's real surface. It was closer than it should be, too close. I could see textures like skin, faint lines crisscrossing in impossible geometry. It wasn't sky at all. It was a dome, a canvas, painted to resemble the night, and something was pressing through it. From the other side, I ran back inside. I don't think I live on Earth anymore. At least, not the version of Earth I was born on. The town looks the same during the day. But if you look too long at a bird in flight, it will vanish mid-air. If you stare at a plane overhead, it loops the same pattern. My neighbor's smile too long. Blink out of sync. And the shadows. The shadows move when nothing else does. I try to talk to someone again. I drove out to a diner 30 miles from here, somewhere far enough that I thought it might still be real. I spoke to the waitress, asked if she'd noticed anything wrong with the stars. She stared at me and smiled. Her smile stretched. "I don't sleep under the sky anymore," she whispered, and her eyes rolled back, just for a second. I left without finishing my coffee. When I got home, my telescope was gone. Just gone. But in its place, on the porch, was something else. A folded piece of parchment. On it a sketch. The spiral. And at the center my house. Circled in red. The spiral hasn't left the sky in 4 nights. It just hangs there, motionless now but larger. Like it's coming closer. It no longer fades during the day either. The sun rises pale and thin behind it, casting warped shadows across the trees. You can't look at it directly anymore. Not without bleeding from the nose. I learned that the hard way. My wife won't come downstairs. She sits in the dark of our bedroom, muttering the same thing under her breath. It's folding the sky. It's folding us into it. I've tried to talk to her, shake her out of it, but she doesn't seem to see me. Not really. 2 nights ago, I heard footsteps on the roof. I grabbed the flashlight and went outside, quiet, barefoot, heart pounding. The spiral rotated slowly above me, silent now. No wind, just a crushing stillness. I aimed the flashlight upward. Nothing. Then I heard it again. Not footsteps. Breathing. Something was on the other side of the sky. Pressed against it. I saw the shape then. A distortion like fingers pushing through rubber. 5 indentations moving slowly across the clouds, dragging long shadows behind them. The stars around it trembled, flickered, and rearranged as it passed. I fell backward onto the lawn. The clouds opened like theater curtains, and something leaned down. Not a face, not a body, just an awareness. Like a colossal presence had tilted itself toward me. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I felt exposed like a file being read. Scanned, and then a blink. The sky blinked again. I lost 3 hours. I woke up inside, covered in dirt. Mud tracked across the kitchen floor. My hands blistered, my fingernails caked with soil. I'd been digging. Out back, there in the grass, was a shallow hole, about the size of a grave. No memory of digging it. But something was inside. Not a body, not an object, just darkness. A perfect black shape hovering an inch above the earth. Like a portal. I tried to take a photo. My phone melted in my hand. Not figuratively. It melted, screen bubbling, plastic warping. I haven't left the house since. The spiral has doubled in size now. It covers nearly a third of the sky. The stars are gone. Even a moon is just a smudge behind it. My wife hasn't spoken in 2 days. She just sits with her eyes wide, her mouth opening and closing in silent sync with the spiral's rotations. Murphy, our dog, refuses to go near the windows. I think he knows what I'm only just starting to accept. We're not under the sky anymore. We're inside something else. The stars have been replaced. I realized that last night, around 3 a.m., when the spiral stopped rotating for the first time in weeks. It simply hovered, motionless, and then began to open, like a pupil dilating. As it widened, hundreds, maybe thousands, of pinpoints of light blinked in a view across the sky. But they weren't stars. They were arranged. Perfect grids, equidistant from each other, forming patterns that I know no telescope has ever recorded. I tried drawing them, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. My wife started speaking again, only in whispers. She said they were the watchers, said they'd always been there, behind the veil, and that the sky folding was just the invitation. She said this with a calm I couldn't match, as if she'd always known this was coming. She looked at me like I was the crazy one. I asked her what she meant. She leaned in and said, "You weren't supposed to see it first." That was the last thing she said. She's still here, still alive, technically, but she's gone. Her body moves, breathes, walks around the house. But her eyes have glazed over, like she's looking past everything. She stares at the spiral for hours. I caught her trying to walk into the backyard hole twice. The second time, she almost made it. I've locked the back door now, but the darkness above us doesn't care about locks. Last night, the spiral began to change color. It turned red first, then violet, then a deep, wet blue that I can only describe as the color of drowning. And when I looked directly into it, I saw others. People, millions of them, suspended in rows like lights strung across an infinite hallway. Their eyes were open, each one looking at someone. I recognized faces, family, friends, people I hadn't thought about in years. And every single one of them looked terrified. Then, like film unraveling, the image peeled away. I saw myself, not in my house, but on a slab, floating, motionless, eyes open, and beside me an outline. Not a figure, not quite, but a shape in negative space. I turned away, heart pounding. When I blinked, I was no longer inside. I was in the backyard, barefoot, standing at the edge of the hole again. This time it was speaking, not in words, but in vibration, in memory. The dirt buzzed beneath me. The grass leaned inward. The trees bent toward it. I heard my wife's voice, but it came from inside the hole. It said, "It's your turn now." I ran, not because I thought I could escape, but because I needed to do something human, something irrational. I ran barefoot down the street under that broken, burning sky, the spiral now a vast, rotating wound above the world, throbbing with impossible color. No one was outside. No cars passed. No lights turned on. It was as if the whole neighborhood had been swallowed into silence. But the watchers were still above. All those new stars in the sky, moving ever so slightly like they were peering down. Tracking. I made it to the edge of town, past the gas station, past the shuttered post office, and then froze. There was no road. I don't mean it ended. I mean it just wasn't there anymore. Beyond the last house, the street stopped like someone had erased it. No trees. No hiraisen. Just a flat black surface stretching out into a featureless void. The sky above that void was blank. No spaided. No stars. I looked behind me. The spiral hovered above my home. Miles away, a beacon calling me back. I turned around, and something was walking toward me from the darkness. It had no face, no features, but I knew what it was. It was me, not just a clone, not a shadow. It was me, stripped of shape, moving with the weight of memory. Every step it took echoed with years I didn't remember living. Regrets I hadn't earned. Faces I didn't know. It raised its arm and pointed at the spiral. I shook my head. No, I whispered. I don't want to see it anymore. But it kept pointing. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. I understood now. The spiral wasn't a thing that came here. It's always been here. We've just been looking at the reflection of a real sky, projected onto a surface we thought was infinite. But it was a dome, a film, a prison, and the spiral is the first tear in the veil. It's not coming. It's letting us see. The hole in my backyard, it's not a hole. It's a hatch, an entrance, or maybe an exit. When I made it back home, dawn was trying to rise, but the sky was holding it back, like the sun was being delayed. The spiral now fills half the heavens. My wife stood in the backyard barefoot, hands raised. She turned to me and smiled. The first genuine smile in days. "We're almost through," she said. She stepped into the hole and didn't fall. She rose, slowly, as if gravity was being rewritten. I watched her ascend into the spiral, and then the sky blinked again. It's just me now. The spiral covers everything. No more stars, no more moon, just that pulsing, watching wound above the world. They come at night, figures made of shadow and memory. I no longer run. I just wait. I sit in the backyard where the hole used to be. It's gone now. The grass is smooth. No dirt. No sign it was ever there. But when I close my eyes, I hear her voice, my wife's, calling. Story 9. I found a door in my basement that wasn't there before. I've lived in this house for 4 years. It's not fancy, not haunted, not weird. Just an old 1950s ranch with creaky pipes and too many spiders. I fixed it up when I moved in. Tore up the basement carpet myself. I know every inch of this place, which is why the door shouldn't exist. It's in the basement. I went down last Tuesday to grab the space heater and noticed it immediately, tucked between the water heater and the breaker box. A wooden door, faded green, with a tarnished brass knob and 3 vertical slits like old mail slots. I froze. I know it wasn't there before. I don't mean I think it wasn't. I mean I know. That corner of the basement was bare concrete. I used to stack paint cans there. Now the door was just waiting. I approached it slowly, expecting to find it was fake. Maybe a weird illusion caused by a shadow. But when I touched the knob, it turned. Unlocked. I didn't open it. Not that day. Instead, I ran upstairs and tried to rationalize. Old houses settle. Maybe a panel was hiding it and finally gave way. Maybe I missed it during renovations. Maybe. No, I didn't miss it. The next day, the door had changed. It was cleaner. No more faded paint. The brass knob shone, and taped to it, with yellowing scotch tape, was a note. Please knock before entering. I didn't. I called my friend Marcus. He's the kind of guy who wants his house to be haunted. He was over in 20 minutes, eyes gleaming like a kid on Halloween. Dude, he said, crouching in front of the door, this thing is old, like handmade, maybe even antique, but it doesn't match the rest of the basement at all. I told him it hadn't been there. He just grinned. Let's knock. Before I could stop him, he tapped 3 times. Nothing. Then, a 4th knock came from the other side. Knock, knock, knock. Exactly the same. Tom like an echo, but wrong. Too fast. Too intentional. Marcus's grin faded. We left the basement and agreed not to go back down for a while. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing knocks. Not just from the basement, but from the walls. The ceiling. My closet. Always in 3s. When I finally passed out from exhaustion around 4 a.m., I dreamed I was back in the basement. The door was open, and something was standing in the threshold. I couldn't see it. It was like it was made of shadow, the edges curling in on themselves. But I felt it watching me. It lifted a hand, long fingers, too many knuckles, and slowly tapped the doorframe 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. I woke up to the sound of footsteps overhead. Except I live alone. You said, continue. ChatGPT said. Story 9. I found a door in my basement that wasn't there before. Section 2. The footsteps continued for maybe 30 seconds. Heavy, deliberate, pacing directly above my bedroom ceiling. Then silence. I grabbed the bat I keep beside the bed. Not because I thought it would help, but because I needed something. I crept through the house. Nothing out of place. All the windows locked. Front and back door deadbolt. I stood in the kitchen, barefoot, heart hammering, listening. Then the sound came again. From the basement. 3 soft, slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't go down. Not that night. Instead, I slept in the bathtub with the door locked and the lights on. The next morning, I told myself I'd imagined it. That I was letting Marcus's excitement infect me. That it was stress, or maybe sleep paralysis. I even pulled up a YouTube video titled Logical Explanations for Creepy Sounds in Your Home. I watched it twice. It didn't help. By that afternoon, I caved and went back down. The door was still there, but now it had changed again. There was a new note, typed this time, and neatly taped above the handle. Entry permitted. Mind your step. The knob turned easily. I don't know what possessed me to open it. Maybe curiosity. Maybe it was the way the air felt heavier every time I walked past the basement stairs, like the door was pulling at something in me. So I opened it. The space behind the door wasn't a room. It was a staircase. Steep, narrow, spiraling downward into impossible darkness. The kind of darkness that swallows light completely. I aimed my flashlight into it. The beam vanished after maybe 6 feet. The walls were brick, crumbled in places with a wet sheen, like a tunnel long forgotten. I thought maybe I'd found some kind of bomb shelter, but that didn't make sense. The house was 1 story, and there shouldn't be this much space underground. I stepped inside, just to the top of the stairs. Cold air rushed past me, up from the depths. It smelled like rust and old leaves. And then music, faint, a melody I couldn't place, sad, slow, almost music box-like. It was coming from below. I backed out and shut the door. Hard. I didn't tell Marcus. I didn't tell anyone. That night, I wedged a chair under the basement door, just in case. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up to the music playing again. But this time, it was inside my bedroom. Just a few notes, like a lullaby playing in reverse. And when I sat up, there was a wet footprint on the floor. Just one, pointed toward the hallway. The footprint was unmistakably human. Wide heel, narrow toes, slightly arched. But it was wrong. Too long for one. The proportions looked like they'd been stretched. And the toes, 5 of them, were too thin like knuckles. Each one pointed inward, curled in a way that made my stomach twist. I stared at it for what felt like an hour. Eventually, I got down on my hands and knees and touched it. Cold, damp, real. I followed it out of my room, flashlight in hand, checking each room down the hall. Nothing. No more footprints. No open windows. No sign of entry or exit. But the air smelled faintly of that same rust and leaf scent from the staircase. I went back to bed, if you could call it that. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening for any sign of the music or footsteps. None came. In the morning, the footprint was gone. Not smeared. Not faded. Gone. The floor was dry, clean, as if it had never been there. That's when I called Marcus again. He was cautious this time. His usual bravado was gone. Dude, he said over the phone, you need to seal that door. Nail it shut. Concrete it over, whatever it takes. I didn't tell him I'd already opened it. Didn't tell him about the stairs, or the music, or the footprint. But I agreed. That night, he showed up with tools. A crowbar, wood planks, a hammer, sealant. He was nervous. Kept glancing at the basement door like it might open on its own. We went down together. The door was still there. The note had changed again. Now it read, "It's polite to knock first." Marcus read it aloud and laughed nervously. I didn't. We got to work sealing it. Planks, screws, the whole deal. Covered the door frame completely. When we were done, Marcus even smeared salt along the edge. Just in case, he said with a weak grin. That night, the knocking came back. 3 soft knocks, but not from the basement. From inside my bedroom wall. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't sleep. The next morning, Marcus was gone. I mean that literally. His car was still in my driveway. His bag was in my living room. But Marcus? Gone. No note. No call. No messages. I checked the sealed basement wall. Untouched. Then I opened his bag. Inside was his phone. I unlocked it using his birthday. There were 2 photos in his camera roll that hadn't been there before. One was of the basement door. The other was darker, grainy. It showed Marcus standing in the basement looking down a set of stairs. And something standing behind him. Tall, shadowy, with one hand gently reaching for his shoulder. I stared at that second photo for over an hour. The figure behind Marcus wasn't blurry. It wasn't some camera artifact or trick of light. It had shape, depth, intent. You could see the faint outline of a face, long and narrow, with no mouth, and eyes like 2 black beads pressed into wet paper. Its hand hovered over Marcus's shoulder like it had been about to tap. Or grab. The timestamp said 2:03 a.m., right around when I'd heard the knocking from my bedroom wall. I don't remember much of what I did next. I know I deleted the photo, threw his phone in a drawer, sat in the shower for over an hour with the water as hot as it would go, trying to convince myself none of it had happened. But it had. Marcus was still gone. I called his sister, his work, even the police. Reported him missing. They took my statement, sent a patrol car by, asked a few questions. One officer checked the basement, gave me a puzzled look when I told him the door used to be there. All he saw was a blank wall. Of course he did. That night, I barricaded myself in my room. Moved the dresser in front of the door. Slept with the lights on, bat in hand. Still heard it. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, it came from the ceiling, like someone crawling just above my room, moving in circles. The music returned too. Louder. More. Frantic. It pulsed like a heartbeat, warping slightly at the edges, as if whatever was playing it didn't understand music, only mimicked it. I barely slept. The next morning, I found something new. A crack. In the basement wall, right where the door had been. Thin at first, almost invisible. But when I touched it, the concrete crumbled just a bit, soft, almost like stale bread, and the air that seeped through, cold and humming. I left the house, took my keys, wallet, and went to a motel 2 towns over. Didn't pack, just drove, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for hours, unsure of what I was even running from. I woke up the next day to find my motel room door wide open, and on the floor by the foot of the bed, a single wet footprint, pointed inward, facing me. I stood there for a long time, just staring at that footprint. It was the same as before, too long, curled toes, faint ridges along the ball of the foot like worn fingerprints. Except this one was fresher, still glistening. A drop of water fell from it and struck the motel carpet with a sound louder than it should have made. I didn't go back to sleep, didn't even sit back down. I gathered my keys and wallet and left immediately. Drove aimlessly for hours. I thought about going to my parents' house or even a hospital, but what would I say? Hi, there's a door in my basement that moved in like a stray animal and started eating my friend. No one would believe me. Hell, I didn't believe me. Eventually, I ended up parked on a cliffside overlook just outside town. I sat there until nightfall, watching the sun dip below the trees, trying to feel human again. But I couldn't shake the feeling I was being followed. Not by a car, not by a person, by a presence. Something behind my eyes. In my reflection, when I looked in a rearview mirror, I saw shapes shift behind the glass. Barely, there flickers like someone standing behind me just out of frame. I returned home just after midnight. I didn't want to. I didn't even remember deciding to. One second I was parked by the cliffs, and the next I was pulling into my driveway like I'd been guided there. The house was dark, still, like it had been waiting. Inside, everything looked untouched, except for one thing. The basement wall was open, split neatly down the middle like a peeled fruit. Brick and concrete pushed aside, clean as a surgical cut. And behind it, the door, the same green wood, brass knob gleaming. 3 vertical slits in the center like a grin without a mouth. There was another note, typed, centered, taped perfectly at eye level. Entry no longer optional. I should have run. Instead, I walked forward like something tugged me. As I stepped toward the door, the space around it felt wrong. Warped, like gravity had shifted sideways. The light from my hallway bent around it. My shadow curved toward it unnaturally. I placed my hand on the knob. It was warm, not like metal heated by air, but like skin, alive. I turned it. The door swung open. The staircase was longer now, steeper. It didn't spiral anymore. It descended, endlessly, straight down into blackness. The music returned, faint, almost welcoming. I don't remember stepping inside, but suddenly I was standing halfway down the steps, and behind me, the door had vanished. I called out. Nothing answered. The staircase kept descending, the air thick and humid, like the inside of a forgotten mouth. My flashlight flickered, casting shadows that didn't match my movements. Some twisted away. Others crept toward me, as if they were deciding. I gripped the railing, wood, warped and slick with moisture, and slowly moved downward. The music grew louder. It wasn't just a melody anymore. It was layered now, full of scraping sound behind the notes, as if something else was singing along, out of sync, slightly off key. After what felt like hours, I reached the bottom. It was a hallway, long, narrow, brick walls lit by swaying bulbs that gave off a greenish hue. The air buzzed with faint electricity. The floor squelched beneath my feet. I stepped forward. A door stood at the far end. Iron, rusted, etched with symbols I couldn't understand. Circles overlapping, lines twisting inward like something tried to collapse in on itself. As I approached, I noticed the walls were moving, breathing, almost expanding and contracting like lungs. And then I heard him. Marcus. His voice. Hoarse. Weak. Don't come in, he said from behind the door. I froze. Marcus. I whispered. No, the voice replied. I'm what's left. I pressed my ear to the iron surface. There was sobbing. Footsteps. Scratching. Then a single word whispered so softly I nearly missed it. Run. I turned, and the hallway was gone, replaced by a different one, shorter, narrower, with red light spilling from beneath the door behind me. The ground trembled. Something moved in the walls. I sprinted back the way I'd come, except the stairs weren't there. Just another door. Green wood, like the original. I opened it and found myself in my bedroom. Everything was as it had been. Bed, lamp, bookshelf. But something felt off. The angle of the ceiling, the color of the walls. Even the air smelled wrong, like damp wood and lilacs. I stepped forward. My bedroom door creaked open on its own, and I saw myself walk past. Same clothes, same face, but the eyes, they were too dark, too still. I watched as I moved through the house, slow and stiff, like someone wearing a human costume. The thing never turned, never blinked. It just wandered from room to room like it was memorizing a script. I tried to follow, but the house shifted around me. Doors led to walls. Rooms ended in black voids. Gravity pulsed like a heartbeat. I collapsed in the hallway, gasping. The music returned, echoing from every wall. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, I was standing in front of the original basement door again, and it was knocking from my side. I didn't knock. I didn't touch the handle. I just stared at it. My basement door, now back where it belonged, good old tarnished brass knob and peeling green paint. Except this time, the slits in the door weren't empty. There was something behind them. Watching. I leaned closer. The slits were darker than the rest of the room, absorbing light. Shapes shifted in that darkness, pulsing faintly in rhythm with the music like breathing, slow and deep and hungry. I whispered, "What do you want?" 3 soft knocks came in reply. Knock, knock, knock. From inside the room I was standing in. I turned, heart in my throat. Nothing there. But the light above me swayed violently, then went out. Pitch black. The music warped, notes collapsing into shrill, dissonant tones. Not a lullaby anymore. More like something being unmade. Screws unscrewing, bones unhinging, and then the door behind me creaked open. I didn't open it. It did that on its own. I felt air rush past me, ice cold and thick with that now familiar scent of rust, wet leaves, and something else, something older than basements and walls. Something that had waited. The darkness beyond the door was deeper than before. Alive, and rising from it, slowly, with a figure, too tall for the frame. Its limbs bent the wrong way as it stepped through. No sound, no weight, like it floated just above the ground. The slits in the door became its eyes. Empty, watching. I couldn't move. The thing raised one hand and placed it on my shoulder. 1,000 images hit me at once. Endless staircases, red corridors, mirrors filled with my reflection, screaming silently. I saw Marcus, curled into a corner, mouthing, "I'm sorry," over and over. I saw myself, smiling with someone else's face. The hand gripped tighter, and it spoke, not with words, but with memory, with the sound of every door I've ever opened. You let me in, then everything vanished. Light returned. I was standing in my kitchen. Morning. The sun poured through the window. Birds chirped outside. My phone buzzed with unread messages. A fresh cup of coffee sat on the counter. The door to the basement was gone. Not closed, gone. Wall sealed, smooth and perfect, like it had never existed. I tried to tell myself it was a dream. That none of it happened, until I stepped outside and saw Marcus's car still parked in the driveway, rust coating the windows, and inside on the driver's seat, a single wet footprint. It's been 3 days. The door hasn't returned. But every night at 3:17 a.m., I hear the music, just a few notes, coming from beneath the floorboards. And sometimes in the hallway mirror, I catch glimpses of myself not quite matching my reflection. I don't sleep much anymore. There's a new crack in the living room wall. Thin, clean like a seam. I know what it is. It's not over. They said entry wasn't optional. They never said anything about leaving. If you ever hear knocking from somewhere it shouldn't be, don't answer. Don't knock back. And whatever you do, don't open the door. Story 10. My grandpa left me a locked room and one rule. When my grandfather died, he left me his house and one sentence in his will. Don't open the locked room at the end of the upstairs hallway. Not until it's time. I'd barely known him. We exchanged maybe 5 phone calls in my entire life. He wasn't close with the rest of the family either. Lived alone in a drafty old house 2 hours outside town. Kept to himself. Never had visitors. So when I inherited it, I thought it was a fluke, a mistake, until the lawyer handed me the keys and said he was very specific about that room. The house itself was what you'd expect: creaky floors, wallpaper peeling at the edges, furniture that smelled like books and dust. But the upstairs hallway, it gave me chills. 12 doors in a row, all old and oak and identical, all unlocked, except the one at the very end. Heavy brass lock, no handed, just a keyhole. The key was in a small envelope paper-clipped to the will. It had a tag attached that read, "Only when it's time." I moved in mostly because I had nowhere else to go. The rent-free living beat my studio apartment downtown. And besides, it was just one locked door. I wasn't going to obsess over it, but something about it pulled. The house was quiet, too quiet. At night, I'd lie in bed and swear I heard a hum coming from the hallway. Not loud, just a vibration like distant machinery running underground. I told myself it was old pipes, or the wind. Still, every morning I'd pass that locked door and pause. I'd feel heat coming off it sometimes. Other times, a cold that made the brass keyhole fog up. And always that humming. One night, curiosity got the best of me. I crouched down, pressed my ear to the wood. I heard whispering, not words, just a faint, repetitive sound like breathing being shaped into language. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I started dreaming about it. The same dream, over and over. I'd be in the hallway, holding the key, standing in front of the door. Behind me, the other doors would all creak open at once. And from inside each one, a pair of eyes would watch me, dozens of them. I'd wake up sweating, the hum louder than ever. One morning, I found a note slipped under the locked door. In my grandfather's handwriting. Almost time. I didn't know what to do with the note. It had clearly been written by my grandfather, but he'd been dead for 2 weeks. The paper even smelled like his old den, tobacco and cedar. The ink was fresh, smudged slightly at the edge, like it had been slid across the floor hastily. Almost time. I tried convincing myself it was an old note I'd overlooked, that maybe it had fallen out of some drawer and I'd imagined where it came from. But then I saw the footprints. Just 2, leading away from the locked door. Bare feet, one set, imprinted in the dust, like someone had walked down the hallway during the night. The spacing was strange. Each step too far from the next, as if whoever made them had unnaturally long legs or walked on the balls of their feet. I followed them. They went halfway down the hall and stopped at one of the other doors, the third from the end on the left. I opened it. It was just a small bedroom, empty except for a full-length mirror leaning against the wall. And in the mirror, just for a moment, I saw something move behind me. But when I turned, nothing. I tried to leave the house that day. Something about the air inside had changed. It felt thick, electric, like the whole building was holding its breath. But when I reached the front door, the key snapped off in the lock. Clean, no force. It just sheared off. And I knew, deep down, what that meant. The house had decided it was almost time too. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked the hallway instead, flashlight in hand, checking each door. I opened them all, bedrooms, closets, linen cabinets. Everything normal, until the 7th door. The one directly across from the locked room. Inside was a chair. Just a chair. Wooden. Facing the far wall. Nothing else. Except scratched into the floor beneath there were 5 words. Sit when the time comes. I backed out, heart racing. When I turned around, the locked door was open, just a crack. The hallway behind me went silent. Even the hum paused. I stared at that sliver of darkness, frozen. Then it slammed shut, hard enough to rattle the walls. The key in my pocket burned hot against my leg. I took it out. It pulsed in my hand, as if whatever was on the other side could feel me. Waiting. The next morning, the hallway felt different. Brighter somehow. Warmer. For a brief moment, I convinced myself it had all been stress. Maybe grief. Maybe a house settling in strange ways. I made breakfast. Opened some windows. Even played music for the first time since moving in. But when I went upstairs again, something had changed. Every door in the hallway was closed. I'd left most of them open. Worse, they'd been rearranged. What used to be the linen closet now opened into the empty bedroom with the chair. The 3rd door, which once led to an empty room, now held the full-length mirror. I spun in circles, dizzy with the wrongness of it. The only door untouched was the locked one. Still sealed, still humming. That afternoon, I went searching through the attic, hoping to find some kind of journal, a blueprint, anything that might explain what my grandfather had been doing here. But most of the boxes were filled with mundane things. Tax forms, yellowed books, an old chess set. Except one box in the corner. It was marked, "If he opens it." Inside was a single envelope. I opened it. A letter. Handwritten, again in my grandfather's careful, slanted penmanship. "If you're reading this, then the house has decided it's you. The room doesn't open unless it knows. I'm sorry. I hoped it would skip your generation. You've probably noticed the changes by now. The doors, the dreams. Don't ignore them. Don't try to leave. It's too late for that. When the room finally opens, you must enter alone. You must sit in the chair. Don't speak to anything unless it speaks first. If it shows you your reflection, do not break eye contact. If it asks you to choose, choose truth. And above all else, whatever happens, do not close the door from the inside." I dropped the letter. The hum began again, louder now, like it was coming from inside my skull. I rushed down from the attic. The hallway lights flickered. The chair was gone from the seventh room. Now the only thing in there was the mirror. And in the mirror, I saw myself, standing in front of the locked door. Even though I hadn't moved, my reflection raised its hand and pointed at the key in my pocket. Then it smiled. I didn't. I slammed the door shut on the mirror room. I couldn't look at it anymore. My reflection grinning with a mouth that wasn't mine, eyes too wide, shoulders slightly crooked like it had worn me wrong. The hum followed me. It didn't come from the house anymore. It came from me, from my bones. It vibrated behind my teeth, echoed in my breath, timed perfectly with my pulse. That night, the key refused to leave my hand. I tried to put it back in the drawer. My fingers wouldn't let go. I dropped it. It landed on the floor, then slid on its own toward the locked door like a magnet being pulled. I didn't follow it. Not yet. Instead, I called my mom. I didn't tell her everything, just that I was having strange experiences in Grandpa's house. She got quiet, then said something that still sends a chill down my spine. "You weren't supposed to stay there alone." I asked her what she meant. Silence. Then, "You should have waited for it to pick someone else." She hung up. I tried to call back. Straight to voicemail. I haven't heard from her since. Later that night, I heard footsteps in the hallway. But not normal footsteps. They were too light, like someone walking on their toes. Slow. Precise. Pacing the length of the hall over and over and over. I opened the door to check. Empty hallway. Except the last door, the locked one, was now wide open. No note. No key. Just open. And behind it, a room I'd never seen. The wallpaper was deep red, peeling in long strips. The air smelled like smoke and earth. One bare bulb dangled from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows that didn't match the angles of the walls. And in the center, the chair. But it wasn't the one I'd seen before. It was identical in shape, but made entirely of bone. Long femurs as legs. Vertebrae for the back. Two skulls fused into armrests. And sitting on it was me. Not just a reflection. A full, solid version of me. Older. Paler. Eyes gray. Wearing the same shirt I'd worn in the mirror days ago. He looked up as I stepped in. Smiled. "Finally," he said. "You're late." I tried to speak. Nothing came out. He gestured to the mirror on the wall behind him. I hadn't noticed it until then. It was tall, wide, and not reflecting the room. Instead, it showed a vast black landscape, flat ground stretching forever, filled with countless chairs. Each one occupied, each one by a version of me. They all turned to look and smiled in unison. I backed away, heart pounding in my throat. But the door behind me was gone. Not closed, gone. Just seamless red wallpaper where the frame had been. The room was sealed, and the air felt heavier now, like the walls were leaning in, eager. The other version of me, the older one, watched calmly from the bone chair. "You knew it would come to this," he said, voice flat but strangely comforting. "We all end up here, sooner or later." I didn't respond. Couldn't. The hum in my chest was now a full-body vibration. My vision shimmered at the edges. The mirror behind him showed those endless chairs again, all the versions of me still smiling. Except now one stood, It pointed at me, and the others followed. Slowly, they began to turn around in the reflection, one by one, as if preparing for something. Their movements didn't sync with anything else. Just silent, deliberate pivots into the unknown landscape beyond the glass. Bone Chermy nodded toward the seat across from him. Sit. It's how it begins. I took a step back. He didn't move to stop me, just kept watching. The skulls that made up the armrests seemed to breathe, tiny contractions in the bone like lungs beneath skin. I said, "What is this place?" He tilted his head. "It's what he left you." "My grandfather?" The older me didn't answer. He looked toward the mirror again. Another version of me had appeared, far back in the field. This one was running. From something. A tall, distant shape was gaining on him. I couldn't make out the details, but the sky behind it was cracked, literally broken like glass. "Every room is a door," the man in the chair said. "This one just leads deeper." I turned back to him. "I'm not sitting." He sighed. Then we're both stuck. Suddenly, the mirror shifted. The landscape flickered, and now I saw the hallway again. My hallway, except the doors were all open, and from inside each one, arms were reaching out. Pale, shaking hands. Some childlike, some ancient. They were all clawing toward the hallway's end. Toward this room. My room. The air cracked. Something behind the mirror was pressing forward. The glass began to bulge, like a fluid membrane. I stumbled back as a hand pushed through. Not bone, not flesh, but shadow. Featureless fingers dripping blackness like ink in water. "Sit," the man said again. But I couldn't. I ran to the far wall, slammed my fist against it. No exit, no seams. Just red wallpaper that pulsed beneath my hands like skin stretched too thin. Behind me, the sound of something stepping through the mirror. Heavy. Vet. Smiling. The thing that emerged from the mirror didn't look like me. Not exactly. It had my shape, same height, same posture, but its features slid like wax melting too slowly. Its eyes were hollow and deep, a swirling void inside each socket, and when it smiled, its lips stretched far beyond human limits. "Truth," it said, voice like the creak of old wood. Truth was chosen. Bone Chermy rose slowly, brushing his fingers over the skulls, as if to soothe them. "We choose truth so we can't forget," he said. "So we can't lie to ourselves about what we are." The thing turned to him and nodded, then to me. I stumbled backward until my spine hit the wall. I was trapped. Again. What do you want?" I managed. It stepped closer. The floor darkened beneath each footfall, as though the shadows leaked from it. To finish the cycle. Bone Chermy stepped aside, gesturing for me to sit. "This is how it ends," he said, "and how it begins again." "No," I said, voice shaking. "I'm not part of this." The shadow thing tilted its head. "You opened the door." "I didn't." "You wanted to." "Wanting is the same." The lights above dimmed further, casting the bone chair in long, twitching shadows. The humming now screamed through my head, rattling behind my eyes, a chorus of voices layered over one another like broken radio signals. Bone Chermy stepped into the mirror without hesitation and vanished into that dark, cracked landscape. Just like that. Gone. The chair was empty. The shadow stepped aside. I stood frozen, staring at the chair. It pulsed. My legs moved without permission. Each step toward it felt like walking into a memory I'd never made. He said, the instant I touched the seat, a jolt snapped through my body. I gasped. The hum stopped. Silence. The mirror brightened. I could see clearly now. Dozens of other rooms, other chairs, other mirrors, and seated in each one was a version of me. Some screaming, some grinning, some whispering things I couldn't hear. But none of them could leave. The shadow crouched beside me. It leaned in, breathless. "Do you see now?" it asked. "Do you remember?" And suddenly I did. I saw the moment my grandfather sat in this chair. I saw the mirror ripple. I saw his reflection rise. And I saw him scream as it took his place and stepped into the world. Took his face. His life. I stood. But the mirror no longer reflected me. It reflected it. And it was already walking down the hallway of my house. Wearing my face. I pounded on the mirror. "Stop!" I shouted. "That's not me." But it didn't hear me. Or maybe it did and just didn't care. The thing in the reflection moved casually, confidently, walking the familiar hallway in my home, fingers trailing along the wallpaper like it was greeting an old friend. It passed the bathroom, the bedroom, the study. I watched as it stopped in front of a picture of my parents, tilted its head, smiled, then kept walking. No, you whispered. You can't do this. The mirror offered no reply. Around me, the room was shifting. The red wallpaper peeled upward like curling petals, revealing more mirrors underneath. All around, the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Every surface now showed a version of my home with it inside. Hundreds of variations. It eating breakfast at my table, laughing with friends I hadn't spoken to in years, sleeping in my bed, curled on my side. One mirror even showed it sobbing into my mother's arms. And she held it, believed it. The realization hit like ice water down my spine. No one would know the difference. Whatever this thing was, it didn't just imitate. It replaced. I backed away from the chair, but the floor was gone. There was no edge to fall off, just reflection beneath my feet, stretching forever. A door appeared, faint outline, floating in midair ahead of me. The hum returned, but softer now, coaxing, a lullaby with teeth. The door creaked open, and standing there was my grandfather, but not as I remembered him. He looked young, strong, a flicker of who he might have been before the room took him. He said nothing, just stared. Behind him, I could see the house again, his house. But it wasn't the same. The doors were gone. The hallway stretched too long. The lighting was too still, like a paused movie scene. Can I go back? I asked. He shook his head slowly, then pointed to the bone chair. Still waiting. Still empty. You sat, he whispered. Now you watch. I tried to scream, run, break the mirror, anything, but my body stiffened. Roots of shadow curled up from beneath the chair, coiling around my ankles, thighs, chest, pulling me back in. I fought. He fought. But the last thing I saw before I was forced to face forward was the reflection of my house. The imposter me answering a knock at the door, smiling, and saying, "Come in." I've been sitting here for days, or maybe years. It's hard to tell. Time doesn't move the same behind the mirrors. I watch it live my life. It laughs better than I do, cries louder, loves harder. No one notices the difference. Why would they? But sometimes, when it's alone, it stares at its reflection, and it waves at me. I think it knows I'm still watching. Sometimes I think it wants me to. If you inherit a house with a locked room and a single rule, don't be curious. Don't open the door, because the thing behind it doesn't need to break in. It just needs you to let it out.